Elena Wright thought she knew Betrayal, until she found the legal documents her husband hid in their home safe, papers designed to erase her existence the moment she signed them. But the real shock came when she realized he'd been planning her erasure for months, methodically dismantling her life while she slept beside him. Walking out wasn't the hard part. Survival was. Because the man waiting in the lobby, the one who heard too much, saw too much, carried secrets darker than her marriage ever held, and he was about to offer her something far more dangerous than safety: choice. If you want to see how Elena reclaims her power and discovers what lies beneath Marco Valenti's carefully controlled world, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Hotel. The apartment smelled like expensive lies. Elena Wright stood in the center of her living room. Correction, their living room, though the lease bore only David's name, another detail she'd overlooked, and felt the weight of 6 years compress into this single crystalline moment. The hardwood floors gleamed beneath recessed lighting that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Abstract art hung on walls painted in shades called whisper and meditation. Everything about this space screamed sophistication, success, permanence. All of it hollow. The cardboard box in her hands held surprisingly little. A few photographs from before the engagement, before the merger of lives and bank accounts, before she'd somehow misplaced the woman who'd once backpacked through Southeast Asia with nothing but a duffel and determination. 3 books she'd brought to the marriage. A ceramic mug her sister made in college, the glaze imperfect and therefore precious. The silver bracelet her grandmother wore through 2 wars and 1 impossible love. That was it. 6 years reduced to objects that fit in a liquor store box. Elena didn't cry. She'd done that already. Ugly, gasping sobs in the bathroom at 2 a.m. while David snored in their bed. Oblivious or uncaring, she no longer knew which. She'd cried in her car during lunch breaks, mascara running into tissue after tissue. She'd cried in the shower until the hot water ran cold and her skin turned to ice. No more tears. Not for him. Not for this. The elevator descended in silence, that particular quality of quiet found only in buildings where money insulates residents from the crude reality of mechanical noise. Elena watched the numbers drop, 42, 41, 40. Each floor a small countdown to whatever came next. Her reflection stared back from polished steel, a stranger wearing her face. When had she started looking so carefully composed? When had animation left her expressions? David's voice echoed in memory. "You're being dramatic. I was working late. Do you know the pressure I'm under?" Translation: Your feelings are inconvenient. Sarah means nothing. It was a client dinner that ran long. Translation: I think you're stupid enough to believe this. If you're going to act paranoid, maybe you should talk to someone. This isn't healthy, Elena. Translation: I will make you doubt your own reality. The gaslighting she could have forgiven, perhaps. People panic when caught. They say stupid things. But the document she'd found in his home office safe, the one he thought she didn't know the combination to, never realizing she'd watched him open it dozens of times, his birthday backwards, so predictably arrogant, those papers revealed something far worse than infidelity: premeditation. A post-nuptial agreement drafted 3 months ago, before she'd even suspected Sarah. Clauses that would leave her with nothing if the marriage dissolved. No claim to the apartment, no portion of assets accumulated during their marriage, no spousal support. Language so carefully constructed it could only have taken weeks to prepare. He'd been planning her exit before she knew there was a door. The elevator chimed, ground floor. Elena stepped into the lobby and immediately registered wrongness. Not danger exactly, but presence. The kind of awareness that prickles across skin when someone's attention focuses too intently. She'd felt it before, usually from men who thought eye contact was invitation. But this felt different. The lobby stretched before her in studied elegance. Marble floors, minimalist furniture, a security desk where Raymond usually sat reading paperbacks and pretending to look alert. Tonight Raymond was engaged in quiet conversation with someone Elena couldn't see from her angle. She moved toward the exit, heels clicking against stone, the sound impossibly loud in the hushed space. Almost there. Almost free. Just 20 more feet to the revolving doors, to the street, to the car she'd called that should be waiting. Mrs. Wright. The voice stopped her mid-stride. Not Raymond's familiar rumble, but something else entirely. Smooth, controlled, carrying an accent she couldn't immediately place. Italian, maybe? Or Greek? Something Mediterranean that turned consonants into silk. Elena turned. The man standing beside the security desk radiated the kind of presence that didn't announce itself, didn't need to. Average height, lean build, wearing a dark suit that fit too perfectly to be off-rack. But it was his face that caught her, sharp features softened by eyes that actually saw, not just looked. Early 40s, she guessed. Hair going silver at the temples. The kind of attractive that sneaks up on you, buried under layers of careful control. "I'm sorry," she said, defaulting to politeness even now, even carrying a box of her dismantled life. "Have we met?" "No." He moved closer, hands visible, posture open, non-threatening. "I'm Marco Valenti. I live on the 37th floor." Elena's mind shuffled through mental files. 37th. The luxury tier, where penthouses started at obscene and climbed to impossible. She'd been to exactly one gathering there. A stiff cocktail party where David networked and she smiled until her face ached. "Oh, well, nice to meet you, Mr. Valenti, but I really need to... I overheard something I shouldn't have." The words landed like stones in still water. Marco's expression remained neutral, but his eyes held something Elena recognized because she'd been living it. Knowledge that changed things. 15 minutes ago, you were on your phone in the north stairwell. I was coming down from the gym. The acoustics in that space are unfortunate. I heard more than you intended anyone to hear." Heat flooded Elena's face. The stairwell. She ducked in there to call her sister, voice breaking as she explained why she couldn't come to Boston, couldn't impose, couldn't show up on Lauren's doorstep with nothing but a box and failure. The conversation had been raw, unfiltered, everything she'd been holding back spilling out in jagged confession. "I wasn't eavesdropping," Marco continued. "I should have announced myself, but you were clearly distressed, and I thought interrupting would make it worse. I'm sorry." Elena clutched the box tighter, knuckles white against cardboard. "Then you know this is none of your business." "Absolutely true." He didn't move, didn't press. "Which is why I'm not asking questions, but I'm offering information. I don't need..." The car idling at the curb is a Nissan Altima, driver wearing a Yankees cap, your rideshare. Marco's tone remained factual, almost clinical. "There's also a black Mercedes parked 3 spaces back, tinted windows. It's been there for 20 minutes with the engine running. Could be nothing. Could be someone waiting for you." Elena's stomach dropped. "David wouldn't..." "I don't know, David. I don't know your situation beyond what I accidentally heard. But I know that look." Marco's eyes held hers, and she saw recognition there, the kind that comes from experience, not observation. That's the look of someone who's made a decision and is terrified someone's going to stop them before they get through the door. She wanted to argue, wanted to insist he was wrong, paranoid, overstepping. But her hands were shaking, and the box suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds, and the distance to the revolving door felt impossible to cross. "What do you want?" The question came out sharper than intended. "Nothing from you." Marco pulled a card from his jacket pocket, held it between 2 fingers. "I have a car. My driver is waiting in the garage. If you'd prefer to avoid whatever might or might not be waiting outside, I can offer you transport. Anywhere in the city. No questions, no strings, no expectations beyond getting you safely to wherever you need to be." Elena stared at the card. Plain white, embossed lettering, Marco Valenti, and a phone number. Nothing else. No company, no title, no decorative flourishes. Why would you help a complete stranger? Because 6 months ago, I watched someone I cared about stay in a situation she should have left. She thought she had time. She thought she could manage it. She was wrong. Something shifted in Marco's expression. Grief, carefully contained. "I'm not trying to save you, Mrs. Wright. I'm offering you a choice. Take your ride share. Take my car. Call a different service. Walk. Whatever you need. But make the choice yourself, not because you're scared of what's waiting outside." The Mercedes. It was probably nothing. David was many things, calculating, cruel in his careful way. But he wasn't violent. He wouldn't actually try to stop her. Would he? Except she'd thought he wouldn't systematically plan her financial destruction either, and those papers proved otherwise. Elena looked at Raymond, who'd been watching this exchange with poorly concealed interest. "Ray, how long has that Mercedes been out there?" Raymond shifted uncomfortably. "About half an hour, Mrs. Wright. Driver got out once, looked at the entrance, made a call, got back in." Her hand started shaking harder. Marco remained still, waiting, not pushing, not persuading, just present. "Your driver," Elena heard herself say. "Where's he parked?" "Level B2, gray Audi. His name is Thomas. He's been with me for 8 years. Absolutely trustworthy." 8 years. The specificity of that detail felt important somehow, like a man who kept count of loyalty might understand its value. Elena made her decision. "I need to go to the Kimpton Hotel on 9th. Can he do that?" "Of course." Marco gestured toward the hallway leading to the garage elevators. "After you." They walked in silence, heels and dress shoes creating rhythm against marble then concrete. The parking garage smelled like oil and money, luxury vehicles in assigned spaces, each one probably worth more than Elena had earned in the past 3 years combined. Marco moved with easy familiarity, leading her past rows of gleaming metal to a gray Audi sedan that somehow managed to look both expensive and understated. A man in his 60s emerged from the driver's seat, salt and pepper hair military short, posture suggesting years of discipline. "Sir." "Thomas, this is Mrs. Wright. She needs transport to the Kimpton on 9th. Please take whatever route you think best and ensure you're not followed." Thomas absorbed this without reaction, as if being asked to run counter-surveillance on a Tuesday evening was perfectly routine. "Of course, sir. Mrs. Wright, if you'll take the back seat." Marco opened the door before Elena could process what was happening. She slid inside, box on her lap, and watched him step back. "Wait," she said. "You're not coming?" "You don't need an audience." Marco's expression softened slightly. "Thomas has my number. If you need anything at all, he can reach me, or you can call me directly. The offer has no expiration date." The door closed with a solid, final sound. As Thomas pulled out of the garage, Elena twisted to look through the rear window. Marco stood in the pool of fluorescent light, hands in pockets, watching them leave. Not with interest or expectation, just watching, making sure. "Mr. Valenti is good people," Thomas said quietly, eyes on the road. "Not many like him left." "What does he do? I mean, for work?" "Various investments, import-export. He keeps himself busy." The non-answer was so smooth it felt practiced. They emerged from the garage onto a side street, and Thomas immediately took a series of turns that seemed random, but probably weren't. Elena looked for the Mercedes, didn't see it, and felt muscles she hadn't realized were clenched begin to relax. Her phone buzzed. "David, where are you? We need to talk. This is ridiculous." She powered it off. The Kimpton materialized from city lights, all glass and architectural ambition. Thomas pulled smoothly to the curb, came around to open her door before she could do it herself. "Thank you," Elena said, meaning it. "I don't know how to... what do I..." "No charge, Mrs. Wright." Mr. Valenti was clear. Thomas pressed something into her hand. Another card, this one with a phone number in neat handwriting. "That's my direct line. You need a ride anywhere, anytime. You call me. Doesn't matter when." Elena looked down at the card, then back at Thomas. "Why? You don't know me." "No, ma'am. But Mr. Valenti has good instincts about people. If he thinks you might need help, that's good enough for me." Before she could respond, Thomas was back in the Audi, pulling away from the curb with professional efficiency. Elena stood on the sidewalk, box in one hand, 2 business cards in the other, and felt the full weight of her situation settle like snow, cold, quiet, accumulating. The hotel lobby welcomed her with soft lighting and the kind of understated luxury that whispered rather than shouted. The desk clerk processed her credit card without judgment, handed over a key card, and wished her a pleasant stay with practiced sincerity. Room 1847 was exactly what she'd expected. Clean, anonymous, safe. Elena set the box on the desk, dropped her purse on the bed, and stood in the center of manufactured comfort, wondering what the hell happened now. Her phone, still powered off, felt heavy in her pocket. Outside the window, the city sprawled in all directions, millions of lights marking millions of lives in progress. Somewhere out there, David was probably pacing their apartment, calculating his next move. Somewhere out there, her sister was probably worrying. Somewhere out there, Marco Valenti was going about his evening, having offered assistance to a stranger and expected nothing in return. Elena pulled out his card again, turned it over. Nothing but that embossed name and number, simple and direct. She thought about the documents in David's safe. The post-nuptial agreement he'd never mentioned. The clauses designed to leave her destitute. The calculation required to plan someone's destruction while sharing their bed. Then she thought about Marco's eyes when he'd said, "I watched someone I cared about stay in a situation she should have left." She thought she had time. She was wrong. Grief, carefully contained. Elena powered on her phone. 17 messages from David, escalating from confusion to anger to pseudo-concern. Nothing from her sister yet. Lauren was probably working late, saving lives in the ER, too busy for her phone. She opened a new message, typed 4 words. "I'm safe. Love you." Then she blocked David's number. The silence that followed felt enormous. Elena unpacked her box, arranging her small collection of rescued items on the hotel desk like artifacts from an archaeological dig. The ceramic mug, the photographs, the books, the bracelet, each one a small defiance, a piece of herself David hadn't managed to erase. She showered until the hot water turned lukewarm, washing away apartment smell and expensive lies. Wrapped in the hotel robe, she sat on the bed and faced the reality she'd been avoiding. No job. She'd quit her position at the gallery when David suggested it, his logic so reasonable. Why stress yourself when you don't need the money? Focus on the things you actually care about. Translation. Make yourself financially dependent so leaving becomes impossible. No apartment, her name on nothing, no lease, no claim. She'd moved into David's space and somehow never thought to question why her name never got added to anything official. No support system in the city. Her friends had slowly disappeared, not through any dramatic falling out, but through the gradual erosion of availability. David's schedule had taken priority. His social calendar had consumed hers. She'd become the woman who always canceled, always had a conflict, always meant to meet up, but somehow never did. Lauren was in Boston. Her parents had retired to Arizona. Everyone else had drifted into that category of people you mean to call, but don't. She was alone. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, sitting in this anonymous hotel room with her grandmother's bracelet cool against her wrist, Elena felt something unexpected. Relief. Alone meant no one was managing her schedule. No one was explaining her own feelings to her. No one was sighing that particular sigh when she wanted to do something that didn't align with his plans. No one was making her feel crazy for trusting her own perception. Alone meant free. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Elena stared at it for 3 rings before answering. "Hello? Mrs. Wright, it's Marco Valenti. I hope this isn't an intrusion." His voice carried the same controlled calm it had in the lobby, but something underneath suggested actual concern rather than polite obligation. "How did you get this number?" "You gave it to Thomas when you made the hotel reservation. He passed it along in case you needed anything." Right. She had. Automatic reflex. Need to reach me? Here's my number. Always available. Always accessible. "I'm fine," she said. "The hotel is perfect. Thank you for everything. I'll pay you back for the ride. Just send me whatever it costs." "There's no charge." A pause. "That's not why I called. I wanted you to know that David Wright came to the lobby about 40 minutes ago." Elena's stomach clenched. "What did he say?" "He asked Raymond if he'd seen you leave. Raymond is admirably good at selective memory. As far as he knows, you took a ride share. He has no recollection of our conversation or my involvement." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because David seemed agitated. He made some calls from the lobby. One of them was to someone he addressed as detective. I couldn't hear the full conversation, but I heard enough to know he's claiming you're mentally unstable and he's concerned for your safety." Cold spread through Elena's chest. "He's setting up a narrative." "That would be my assessment, yes." She should have expected this. David was nothing if not thorough. Establish her as irrational, unstable, unreliable. make any accusation she leveled seem like delusion. It was brilliant, really. Vicious, but brilliant. Mrs. Wright, are you safe where you are? Yes, he doesn't know where I went. Good. Keep it that way. Marco's tone shifted, becoming more direct. I don't want to overstep, but if you need legal representation, I know several excellent attorneys who specialize in... I can't afford excellent attorneys, Mr. Valenti. Silence on the line. Then, let me rephrase. I know several excellent attorneys who would be willing to work on contingency or reduced rates for the right case. Yours might qualify. Why? The question burst out sharper than intended. Why do you care? You don't know me. This isn't your problem. No, it's not my problem. Marco's voice remained steady. But I told you, I watched someone stay too long in a bad situation. I'm not interested in watching it happen again, even to a stranger. Consider this enlightened self-interest. I sleep better knowing I offered help when I could. Elena closed her eyes. The person you mentioned, the one who stayed too long. What happened? The silence stretched so long she thought he might have hung up. She died, Marco finally said, voice carefully neutral. Car accident. Single vehicle. Late at night on a road she knew well. The official report ruled it accidental. But she'd been trying to leave her husband for months. She'd made plans. And then she was gone. I'm sorry. So am I. Which is why I'm offering you information, not charity. You can do whatever you want with it. But you should know that David filed a missing persons report 20 minutes ago. Elena's eyes snapped open. What? According to Raymond, who called me because he's worried, not because I asked him to spy, your husband told police you've been acting erratic, talking about harming yourself, and he's afraid you might be in danger. He was very convincing, apparently. That son of a... Elena cut herself off, mind racing. Missing persons report. Unstable wife. Concerned husband. If police found her, if there was any kind of scene, any documentation of mental health crisis, real or manufactured, the post-nuptial agreement suddenly made perfect sense. Establish instability. Create a paper trail of erratic behavior. When the divorce came, and David had clearly always planned for it to come, he'd have ammunition. Poor David, trying so hard to help his unstable wife. Of course she should get nothing. Of course she couldn't be trusted with assets. Look at all this documentation. I need a lawyer, Elena said. And not tomorrow. Tonight. Give me 15 minutes. The line went dead. Elena sat on the hotel bed, mind spinning through possibilities and consequences. David wasn't just covering his tracks. He was building a case. How long had he been planning this? Months? Years? Her phone rang again. Different unknown number. Mrs. Wright, my name is Catherine Chen. I'm an attorney specializing in family law and asset protection. Marco Valenti asked me to call you. Are you in a position to speak freely? Yes, I'm alone. Good. I need to ask you some questions and I need you to be completely honest with me. Can you do that? Yes. Are you currently experiencing any mental health crisis? No. Have you threatened to harm yourself or anyone else? No, never. Has your husband ever physically harmed you? Elena hesitated. No, not physically. Financially? Emotionally? Coercive control? Yes. All of those. Do you have evidence? Elena thought of the papers in David's safe. I photographed some documents. Post-nuptial agreement he drafted without telling me. They're on my phone. Send them to the number I'm calling from, right now while we're talking. Elena put the call on speaker, opened her photos, and started forwarding images. 23 pages of legal language designed to erase her. Got them, Catherine said. These are... Jesus. Okay. This is good. Well, not good, but useful. He drafted these himself? His signature is on the filing page. Even better, Mrs. Wright, I need you to listen very carefully. Your husband has created a situation where if you're found and brought in for any kind of wellness check, it could damage your credibility moving forward. We need to get ahead of this. How? We file first, tomorrow morning, first thing. We file for legal separation and request a temporary restraining order based on financial coercion and emotional abuse. We submit your evidence. We establish you as the one seeking protection, not the one fleeing irrationally. I can't afford. We'll discuss fees later. Right now, I need to know if you're willing to fight. Because once we file, this gets ugly. David will retaliate. He'll escalate. But if we don't establish your narrative immediately, his version becomes the default. Elena looked at her grandmother's bracelet, thought about wars and impossible love and women who survived. I'm willing to fight. Good. I'll need you to come to my office tomorrow at 8 a.m. Can you do that? Yes. Don't contact David. Don't respond to anyone claiming to be acting on his behalf. If police show up for a wellness check, be polite, cooperate, but don't discuss your marriage. Just confirm you're safe and refer them to me. Understood? Understood. Catherine rattled off an address in Midtown. Get some sleep if you can. Tomorrow's going to be intense. The call ended. Elena sat in silence, processing the fact that her life had just shifted from escape to warfare in the span of 3 hours. Another call. Marco again. Catherine's good, he said without preamble. She's expensive, but she's good. Whatever she tells you to do, do it. Mr. Valenti. Marco. I don't understand why you're doing this. I told you I don't want to watch another woman. No. Elena cut him off. That's part of it, maybe. But there's more. You have Catherine Chen on speed dial. You have a driver who runs counter-surveillance without blinking. You knew exactly what David was doing with that police report. This isn't just about someone you lost. You know this world. Silence. Then a long exhale. You're perceptive. You're evasive. Fair. Marco paused. My family has experience with situations where power dynamics become weapons. I've seen how systems can be manipulated by people who understand leverage. Your husband is good at leverage. And you're better? I'm different. He uses leverage to control. I use it to create balance. Elena processed this. Are you dangerous, Marco? To you? No. To people who hurt people I've decided to protect? Potentially. The honesty was startling. Most men would have deflected, reassured, lied by omission. Marco simply stated facts and let her decide what to do with them. I'm not asking you to protect me, Elena said carefully. I'm asking you to help me protect myself. Good distinction. And yes, I can do that. A pause. Get some rest, Elena. Tomorrow you start taking your life back. He hung up before she could respond. Elena set her phone aside and stared at the ceiling, mind refusing to settle. 6 hours ago, she'd been married. 6 hours ago, she'd been Mrs. David Wright, living in a luxury apartment playing the role of supportive wife. Now she was Elena Wright, alone in a hotel room, preparing for war with a man who'd spent months planning her destruction. The bracelet caught lamplight, silver gleaming, 2 wars and 1 impossible love. She could do this. She had to. Sleep came eventually, fitful and full of dreams, where she walked through endless corridors looking for exits that didn't exist. She woke at 6 a.m., showered, and dressed in the same clothes she'd worn yesterday, the ones she'd thought she'd wear to dinner with her sister, back when she'd still believed David's explanations. Catherine's office occupied the 20th floor of a building that screamed competence and discretion. The reception area was all clean lines and tasteful art, designed to put nervous clients at ease without feeling cheap. Elena gave her name, was shown to a conference room, waited. Catherine Chen materialized at exactly 8 a.m., carrying a leather portfolio and an expression that suggested she'd already consumed significant caffeine. Early 40s, Elena guessed. Perfectly tailored suit, eyes that missed nothing. Mrs. Wright, thank you for being punctual. Catherine sat, opened her portfolio, and pulled out the photographs Elena had sent. Let's talk about destroying your husband's credibility, shall we? Over the next 3 hours, Elena answered questions she'd never imagined being asked. When had she first noticed the financial control? How had David responded to her having independent plans? Were there witnesses to his behavior? Had he ever isolated her from friends or family? The answers painted a picture Elena hadn't fully seen while living inside it. Death by 1,000 cuts, each one small enough to rationalize, to explain away, to accept as just how things were. Catherine documented everything with precise notation. We're filing today. Separation, restraining order, and we're asking the court to freeze joint assets pending resolution. David's going to lose his mind. He'll fight back. Of course he will. But we have evidence of premeditated financial abuse. Catherine tapped the photos. These documents, he drafted them knowing you'd never see them until after you signed. That's fraud. And the timing 3 months before you discovered the affair? That shows planning. He's not just a cheater, he's a predator. The word landed hard. Elena had thought of David as many things, cold, calculating, selfish, but predator felt accurate in a way that made her skin crawl. What happens now? Now we file. You'll be served first since you're the petitioner. David will be served by end of business today. Then we wait for him to show his hand. Catherine's expression sharpened. And he will show his hand. Men like your husband can't help themselves. They need to control the narrative. She was right. David's response came at 4 p.m., delivered via his attorney, Roger Sterling, a name Elena recognized from society pages and high-profile divorces. The letter was masterful in its viciousness. David was shocked and devastated by Elena's erratic behavior. He'd been trying to help her, had encouraged her to seek therapy, had been nothing but supportive despite her increasing paranoia and unfounded accusations. He was deeply concerned for her well-being and hoped she'd accept the help she so clearly needed. The restraining order was particularly hurtful as he'd done nothing to warrant such extreme action. However, if Elena needed space, he would respect that. He only asked that she reconsider this destructive path and remember the love they'd shared. "It's beautiful," Catherine said without inflection. "Absolute garbage, but beautiful. He's playing wounded husband perfectly. Will it work?" "Not with our evidence, but he's going to try to undermine your credibility every way he can. Expect him to start reaching out to mutual friends. Expect rumors. Expect him to paint himself as the victim of a mentally unstable woman." Elena's phone had been buzzing all afternoon. Friends she hadn't spoken to in months suddenly concerned about her well-being. Had she really filed for divorce? Was she okay? David seemed so worried. She didn't answer any of them. Instead, she sat in her hotel room and did something she should have done months ago. She Googled her husband. The results were illuminating. David Wright, CFO of a mid-sized pharmaceutical company. Respected professional. Charitable donor. Board member of several organizations. Married to Elena Wright, no children. Elena scrolled deeper, past the professional highlights to archived society pages and old news articles. That's when she found it. A brief mention in a business journal from 5 years ago, before they'd met. David Wright had been questioned in connection with financial irregularities at his previous company. No charges filed, matter resolved internally. Elena clicked deeper, found more. A pattern of companies where David had worked briefly before moving on. Nothing concrete, nothing provable, just a trail of resolved irregularities and internal matters. Her husband wasn't just calculating, he was experienced. She called Catherine. "I found something, previous financial issues at multiple companies. Nothing charged, but there's a pattern." "Send me everything. I'll have an investigator look into it." Catherine paused. "You okay?" "I married someone I didn't know at all." Most people do. You're just figuring it out faster than some." The next 3 days passed in a blur of legal maneuvering and discovery. Catherine's investigator, a former FBI agent named Marcus Webb, found things even Elena hadn't expected. David's previous marriage dissolved after 18 months. The restraining order his ex-wife had filed, later withdrawn. The settlement that included an NDA. "She won't talk," Marcus reported. "The NDA is ironclad, but the court records tell a story. She claimed financial abuse, emotional manipulation, and threatened self-harm to escape him." Elena felt sick. "He's done this before. And he's gotten better at it each time. Your post-nup is more sophisticated than what he tried with her. He's learning." "Can we contact her? Warn her that we might need her testimony?" Marcus shook his head. "The NDA includes penalties for even discussing the marriage. She won't risk it. But knowing the pattern helps us. It shows this isn't isolated behavior. It's a method." David's counteroffensive came on day 4. A full media blitz, interviews with sympathetic reporters about his unstable wife, careful statements about privacy and concern, strategic leaks about Elena's erratic behavior. The narrative was simple and effective. Successful man tries to help troubled wife. gets punished with false accusations. Elena watched it unfold from her hotel room, feeling powerless. Until Marco called. Have you seen the news? Yes. How would you feel about telling your side? Elena gripped the phone tighter. Catherine said not to talk to press. I'm not suggesting press. I'm suggesting you tell your story directly. Social media, your own words, no filter, just truth. David will destroy me. David is already trying to destroy you. Right now, you're letting him control the narrative. What if you didn't? What if she didn't? Elena ended the call and opened her laptop, created a new account, not under her married name, but her maiden name. Elena Wright had been David's creation. Elena Castellano had existed long before him. She began typing. My name is Elena Castellano. Some of you know me as Elena Wright. Here's what you don't know. She wrote about the apartment she'd left, the safe she'd opened, the documents designed to erase her, the pattern of isolation and control she'd mistaken for love, the missing persons report filed while she was safe in a hotel, making her own decisions for the first time in 6 years. She didn't name David, didn't have to. Anyone who'd seen his media tour would make the connection. She ended with this: I'm not mentally unstable, I'm not erratic, I'm not running from help, I'm running toward myself. And if sharing this truth makes me a target, so be it. I'm done shrinking to make someone else feel powerful. She posted it at midnight, expecting nothing. By dawn, it had been shared 40,000 times. By noon, reporters were calling the hotel. By evening, David's carefully constructed narrative had cracks showing. Because Elena hadn't just told her story. Dozens of women had added theirs in the comments. Different men, same pattern. Financial control. Emotional manipulation. Strategic isolation. The playbook was universal. Only the details changed. Catherine called, voice tight. What did you do? I told the truth. You told the truth in a way that's now viral and probably admissible in court. David's attorney is losing his mind. They're claiming defamation. Did I lie about anything? No, which is why they can't actually sue. But Elena, you've just made this a public battle. It's going to get ugly. It was always going to get ugly. Now it's ugly on my terms. Silence. Then Catherine laughed, short and sharp. Okay, we can work with this. In fact, we can use this. Public pressure might push David to settle rather than drag this through court. But David didn't settle. He escalated. The next morning, Elena woke to her phone exploding with notifications. Someone had leaked her address, not the hotel, but her sister's address in Boston. Lauren was being harassed by reporters. Elena called immediately. I'm so sorry, I never meant... Stop. Lauren's voice was firm. This isn't your fault, and I'm fine. Campus security is handling the reporters. But Elena, you need to see what else is happening. What? Someone leaked documents, financial records. They're saying you've been stealing from David for months, that you have accounts in the Cayman Islands, that this whole thing is a scam to get his money. Elena's blood went cold. That's impossible. I didn't... I know, but the documents look real, professional. Someone with serious resources put this together. David? Or someone working for him? Lauren paused. You need to tell Catherine, now. Catherine's response was immediate and furious. These are fabricated, completely fabricated. We'll prove it, but this is... Elena, this is beyond dirty tricks. This is criminal. Forging financial documents, identity theft, fraud. We can prosecute this. Will anyone believe me? After David spent a week telling everyone I'm unstable? They will when we prove these documents are fake. I've already got Marcus on it. He'll trace the origin, find the source, and will bury whoever created them. But the damage was done. Elena's viral post was now being questioned. Was she really a victim, or was this an elaborate con? The comments shifted from support to skepticism. David had found her weakness and exploited it perfectly. Elena sat in her hotel room, watching her credibility disintegrate in real time, and understood something fundamental. David wasn't going to stop. He wasn't going to back down. He was going to destroy her completely, methodically, using every resource at his disposal. Unless she stopped playing defense and went on offense. She called Marco. I need your help. Not legal help. Not advice. I need you to tell me the truth about who you are and what you can actually do. Elena, No evasion, no careful answers. You said your family has experience with power dynamics and leverage. I'm guessing that's not because you're bankers or lawyers. So tell me, what can you actually do? Marco was silent for so long Elena thought he'd hung up. Then, I can make problems disappear. Not through violence, through information and pressure. I have resources David doesn't, connections he can't match. But if I use them, you need to understand what that means. What does it mean? It means you'll owe me nothing, but you'll know what I am. And you can't unknow that. Elena thought about her grandmother's bracelet. 2 wars and 1 impossible love. Sometimes survival required uncomfortable alliances. Tell me what you are. My family has historical involvement in certain business sectors that operate outside traditional legal frameworks. I've distanced myself from most of that, but the connections remain. The resources remain. And when necessary, I use them. You're connected to organized crime. My grandfather was, my father was. I'm something else. Call it reformed, call it evolved, call it whatever helps you sleep at night. But yes, I have access to methods and information most people don't. Elena closed her eyes. If I ask for your help, what happens? We find proof David forged those documents. We find every dirty secret he's ever buried. We give Catherine ammunition so overwhelming he has no choice but to surrender completely. And then you walk away free. And what do you get? The satisfaction of watching a predator lose. It should have sounded too good to be true. It should have set off every warning bell Elena possessed, but something in Marco's voice, that careful control wrapped around genuine anger, felt honest. Do it, she said. You're sure? I'm sure. 72 hours later, Catherine walked into Elena's hotel room carrying a file folder 6 inches thick. Where did you get this? She asked, voice somewhere between awe and horror. A friend helped. Your friend has access to sealed court records, private financial statements, and what appears to be a complete history of David's offshore accounts. Elena, this is everything, not just for your case. This could be criminal charges, multiple charges, fraud, tax evasion, money laundering. Can you use it? Catherine sat down slowly. Can I use it? This is a nuclear weapon. If we file this with the court, David's not just losing the divorce. He's losing his freedom. Then file it. Are you sure? Because once this is out there, there's no taking it back. David's life is over. His career, his reputation, everything. Elena thought about the post-nuptial agreement, the forged financial documents, the systematic destruction of her credibility, the ex-wife bound by an NDA, too terrified to speak. He was going to do the same to me. Worse, he would have left me with nothing and made everyone believe I deserved it. So yes, file it. Catherine did. The next 24 hours were chaos. Federal investigators showed up at David's office. Assets were frozen. Accounts were seized. The media that had so carefully crafted his wounded husband narrative pivoted instantly to white-collar criminal. Elena's fabricated documents were traced back to a firm David had hired, a firm that specialized in corporate espionage and reputation management. Their involvement meant David couldn't claim ignorance. His attorney withdrew from the case. His company suspended him pending investigation. His carefully constructed life collapsed in real time. Elena watched it happen and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not relief, just profound exhaustion. Marco called on the 3rd day. How are you holding up? I don't know. Everyone's acting like I won, but it doesn't feel like winning. That's because it's not winning. It's surviving. There's a difference. Is there? Winning would have been never meeting David right in the first place. Surviving is making it through and coming out whole on the other side. Elena looked at her reflection in the hotel mirror, thinner than she'd been 6 months ago, shadows under her eyes, but also present, aware, alive. What happens now? She asked. Now you decide what you want your life to look like. Not what someone else wants. Not what you think you should want. What you actually want. I don't know what I want. Then you have time to figure it out. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later. Elena got everything, the apartment, the assets, A settlement that would keep her comfortable for years, not because she'd asked for it, but because David's legal team was so focused on keeping him out of prison, they conceded every civil claim without fighting. Elena sold the apartment immediately. Couldn't stand to spend another night in a space saturated with lies. She rented a smaller place in the West Village, something with character and imperfect charm. Hung her grandmother's bracelet on the wall above her desk. Unpacked her 3 books and placed them on a shelf she bought herself. Started building a life that belonged only to her. Marco showed up with wine the night she moved in. "Housewarming gift," he said, holding up the bottle. "You've done enough. More than enough. I brought wine, Elena. I'm not rebuilding your kitchen. Let me in." She did. They sat on the floor, no furniture yet, that was tomorrow's task, and drank expensive wine from coffee mugs. "Thank you," Elena said quietly, "for everything. I wouldn't have survived without you." "You would have, just differently." Marco studied his mug. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you trust me, that first night? You didn't know me. I could have been anyone." Elena considered this. "You gave me choice. You didn't tell me what to do. You didn't try to save me. You just offered options and let me decide. That felt different than anything I'd experienced in years. Most people would have run the other way once they knew what I was." "Maybe. But you were honest about it. David lied about everything while claiming to be respectable. You told the truth while admitting you weren't. I'll take honest and complicated over dishonest and simple any day." Marco smiled, a real one that transformed his careful features. "You're going to be okay, Elena Castellano." "I know." And surprisingly, she meant it. They finished the wine. Talked about nothing important. And when Marco left, promising to help her assemble furniture tomorrow if she needed it, Elena closed the door and stood in her empty apartment feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. The journey wasn't over. There would be therapy sessions and legal aftermath and moments when she'd question every decision she'd made. But for the first time in 6 years, the life ahead of her belonged to her alone. And that was enough. That was everything. The furniture arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by 2 men who grunted their way up 3 flights of stairs because the building's elevator was undergoing repairs. Elena directed them with a confidence that surprised her. Couch there, bookshelf against that wall, desk by the window where morning light would hit it just right. Simple decisions, but they were hers. Marco showed up 20 minutes after the delivery men left, carrying a toolbox that looked well used rather than decorative. "You actually know how to use those?" Elena asked, eyeing the collection of tools. "My grandfather believed every man should know how to build things with his hands, said it kept you honest." Marco set the toolbox down and surveyed the boxes stacked around the room. "Where do we start?" They spent the afternoon assembling furniture, a task made longer by Elena's insistence on reading every instruction completely before beginning, and Marco's tendency to eyeball measurements and adjust as needed. Their methods clashed, then merged into something that worked. Elena planning, Marco executing, both of them laughing when pieces didn't quite fit the way the diagrams promised. "You're actually good at this," Elena said, watching him attach the final leg to her dining table. "Surprised?" "A little. You seem more like the type who'd hire people." "I do hire people. For things I don't enjoy." Marco tested the table's stability, nodded in satisfaction. "But building something with your own hands is different. You know every joint, every weak point. You understand how it holds together." Elena understood he wasn't just talking about furniture. Her phone rang. Catherine calling with updates about David's criminal proceedings. Elena stepped into the bedroom to take it, leaving Marco to finish organizing tools. "The federal prosecutor is moving forward with charges," Catherine said. "Tax evasion, money laundering, wire fraud. David's looking at serious prison time if convicted." "How's he handling it?" "Badly. He fired his 3rd attorney yesterday. Keeps insisting this is all a misunderstanding, that he's being targeted." Catherine paused. "Elena, he's also claiming you conspired with someone to fabricate evidence against him." "That's ridiculous." "Of course it is. The evidence is real, his own documents, his own accounts. But he's desperate, and desperate people say desperate things. I wanted you to know in case he tries to contact you directly." Elena glanced toward the living room where she could hear Marco whistling quietly while he worked. "He won't. The restraining order hasn't stopped him from trying. He sent flowers to your old hotel yesterday. The staff refused them, but he's testing boundaries. Be careful. After the call ended, Elena stood in her bedroom in her apartment, paid for with her settlement, and felt the old anxiety creeping back. David wasn't done. He'd never be done. Men like him didn't accept loss gracefully. She returned to the living room to find Marco had finished with the tools and was examining her bookshelf, reading titles with genuine interest. "Everything okay?" he asked, not looking up. "Catherine says David's getting more erratic, trying to contact me despite the restraining order." Now Marco looked at her, and his expression shifted from casual to alert. "What kind of contact?" "Flowers. Messages through third parties. Nothing direct yet, but Catherine thinks he's testing to see if I'll respond." "And you won't?" "Of course not." "Good." Marco closed the book he'd been examining. "But we should probably discuss security." "Security? Marco, I'm in a third-floor walk-up in the West Village. This isn't exactly high-risk territory. Your ex-husband is facing federal charges because you exposed his criminal activity. That makes you a threat he wants neutralized. Not physically," Marco added quickly, seeing Elena's expression. "David's not stupid enough for violence, but he'll try other methods, harassment, intimidation, making you feel unsafe enough to drop the charges." "I'm not dropping anything." "I know, which is why we're going to make sure you don't have to." Marco pulled out his phone. "I'm going to have Thomas check on you periodically. Random times, different days, just to make sure no one's watching the building or following you." Elena wanted to argue that this was excessive, paranoid, unnecessary, but she remembered the forged documents, the missing persons report, the systematic way David had tried to destroy her credibility. "Okay," she said quietly. "Thank you." They finished the afternoon with pizza eaten at her new table, conversation flowing easily between topics that mattered and ones that didn't. Marco told her about growing up in his family, the expectations and contradictions, the slow process of building something different while carrying a complicated legacy. Elena talked about her gallery job, the one she'd loved and left, and the growing realization that maybe she wanted to return to that world on her own terms. "So do it," Marco said simply. "It's not that easy. I've been out of the field for years. People remember me as David's wife, not as Elena who actually knew art history." "Then remind them who you were, who you are." Marco leaned back in his chair. "You just took down a man who spent months planning your destruction. You think curating an exhibition is harder than that?" Put that way, it sounded almost simple. After Marco left, Elena sat at her new desk and opened her laptop, started composing emails to old colleagues, carefully worded inquiries about opportunities, mentions of her availability and interest in returning to work. Each one felt like a small act of reclamation. She was 3 emails in when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Elena stared at it, Catherine's warning fresh in her mind. But curiosity won. "Hello?" Heavy breathing. Then a woman's voice, strained and urgent. "Is this Elena Castellano?" "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Jennifer. Jennifer Wright. I was married to David before you were." Elena's grip tightened on the phone. The ex-wife, the one bound by the NDA. "How did you get this number?" "I have my ways. Look, I don't have much time. The NDA signed. If David finds out I contacted you, I'm in violation. But I saw what he did to you, the forged documents, the media campaign. I lived through a version of that, and I can't just watch him do it again without saying something." "What do you want to tell me?" Jennifer's voice dropped lower. "He's not going to stop. Even with the criminal charges, even with everything you've exposed. He can't accept losing. When he was served divorce papers from me, he spent 6 months making my life hell. Anonymous complaints to my employer, threats disguised as concern. He made me feel like I was losing my mind. I'm sorry you went through that. I'm not calling for sympathy. I'm calling to warn you. David keeps records, detailed records, photos, recordings, documentation of everything. He used them against me to enforce the NDA. If he has anything on you, anything at all that could be twisted or misinterpreted, he'll use it." Elena thought about the years she'd lived in David's apartment, surrounded by his technology, his security system, his control. What kind of recordings? Everything. Audio, video. He had cameras installed that I didn't know about, caught me on bad days, vulnerable moments, and later claimed I was unstable. The recordings were edited, taken out of context, but they looked damning. Cold spread through Elena's chest. I lived there for 6 years. I know, which is why you need to prepare for whatever he might have. Get ahead of it. Don't let him control the narrative again. Jennifer paused. There's something else. David has a pattern with the women he targets. Successful, independent, usually in creative or professional fields. He likes the challenge of breaking that down, making them dependent. You weren't random. None of us were. How many others were there? I only know about 2 others before me, but there could be more. He moves in patterns, finds someone, love bombs them, isolates them, then destroys them when they try to leave. You're just the first one who fought back publicly. Elena processed this. Why are you risking the NDA to tell me this? Because I was too scared to fight. I took his settlement and disappeared, and I've hated myself for it every day since. When I saw what you did, how you refused to be silenced, I realized I could at least do this much. Warn you. Give you information he wouldn't want you to have. Thank you, Jennifer, truly. Don't thank me. Just win. Completely. Make sure he can't do this to anyone else. The line went dead. Elena sat motionless, mind racing. Recordings, video evidence, edited and manipulated. How much of her life in that apartment had been documented without her knowledge? How many vulnerable moments had been captured for potential future use? She called Catherine immediately, relayed everything Jennifer had said. Recordings would be inadmissible if obtained without your consent, Catherine said. New York is a one-party consent state for audio, but video in a private residence without knowledge could violate privacy laws. Could or does. The law has gray areas, but if he tries to use them, we argue they were obtained illegally and should be suppressed. The bigger concern is if he leaks them publicly rather than using them in court. To destroy my credibility again. Exactly. We need to get ahead of this. I'll file a motion requesting that any recordings made in the marital residence be turned over to the court for review. If they exist, we'll know, and we can control how they're presented. After hanging up, Elena found herself standing at her window, looking out at the street below. A couple walked past, laughing at something on one of their phones. A dog walker juggled 5 leashes with practiced ease. Normal life happening everywhere, while she dealt with the aftermath of trusting the wrong person. Her phone rang again. Marco this time. Thomas just called. There's a car parked across from your building. Been there for 40 minutes. Driver's watching your windows. Elena's pulse spiked. What kind of car? Dark sedan, tinted windows, could be nothing, but I'll call the police. Already did. They're sending a patrol car. But Elena, I think you should stay with me tonight, just to be safe. Every independent instinct in Elena's body rebelled against the suggestion. She'd just moved into this apartment, just reclaimed her space. The idea of letting David's intimidation tactics force her out, even temporarily, felt like surrender. But she also wasn't stupid. Okay, she said. Give me 15 minutes to pack a bag. Marco's apartment occupied the penthouse she remembered from that terrible cocktail party years ago. But seeing it now, really seeing it, not through the lens of playing David's wife, revealed details she'd missed. The space was masculine, but not aggressively so, furnished with pieces that looked collected rather than decorated. Art on the walls that actually meant something rather than just filling space. Books everywhere, not arranged for show but clearly read. Guest room is down the hall, Marco said, taking her overnight bag. Bathroom attached. Help yourself to anything you need. The guest room was larger than her entire bedroom in the new apartment, decorated in neutral tones that managed to feel welcoming rather than sterile. Elena set her bag on the bed and stood awkwardly, uncertain what to do now. Marco appeared in the doorway. Wine? Or something stronger? Wine. Definitely wine. They settled in his living room, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the city that would have cost millions if someone tried to replicate it as art. Elena curled into a corner of his couch, accepting the glass he offered. I got a call tonight, she said. From David's ex-wife. Marco's eyebrows rose. The one with the NDA? She's risking serious penalties to warn me. Said David keeps recordings, video and audio from the apartment. She thinks he'll use them against me. He probably will, or try to. Marco swirled his wine thoughtfully. But Jennifer, that's her name, right? She's smart to warn you. Forewarned is forearmed. You know her? I know of her. Marcus did background research when we were building your case. Jennifer Hartford, formerly Wright, successful architect before she married David. Quit her job 6 months into the marriage. Divorce finalized after 18 months. Left the city entirely, moved to Portland, started over under her maiden name. Elena absorbed this. He destroyed her. He tried. But she's rebuilding, slowly. The NDA makes it harder. She can't talk about what happened, can't warn other women, can't even acknowledge the marriage publicly without risking legal consequences. But she survived. Is that what I'm doing? Just surviving? Marco looked at her directly. You're doing more than that. You're fighting back. There's a difference. They sat in comfortable silence, the city glittering beyond the windows. Elena let herself relax into the moment, let the wine and safety and quiet do their work. Can I ask you something? She said eventually. Of course. That woman you mentioned, the one who stayed too long, who was she? Marco's expression shuddered slightly, but he didn't deflect. Her name was Sophia, my cousin, though we were raised more like siblings. Her husband was charming, successful, perfectly pleasant in public. Behind closed doors, he was controlling, cruel. She tried to leave 3 times. He convinced her to come back each time. The car accident. Single vehicle collision, late at night on a road she'd driven hundreds of times. The official investigation ruled it accidental. Weather conditions, possible fatigue. But Sophia had told me she was planning to leave again, had everything arranged. And then she was gone. Well, you think he killed her? I think the circumstances were suspicious enough to warrant deeper investigation. But her husband had connections, resources, and a very good attorney. The case was closed quickly. Marco's jaw tightened. I couldn't prove anything. Couldn't help her. All I could do was watch the man who probably killed my cousin walk away free. I'm sorry. So am I. Which is why when I saw you in that lobby, carrying that box and looking like you were one strong wind away from breaking, I decided I wasn't going to watch it happen again. Even to a stranger. Elena set down her wine glass and moved closer, impulsively taking Marco's hand. Thank you for seeing me. For helping me. For giving me choice when I thought I had none. Marco looked down at their joined hands, then back at her face. You always had choice, Elena. You just needed someone to remind you. The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither seemed ready to name. Then Marco's phone buzzed, breaking the spell. He checked it, frowned. Police just cleared the car outside your building. Registration came back to a private investigation firm. David hired someone to watch me. Looks that way. They're gone now, but they'll probably be back. Marco's expression hardened. We need to make this stop. How? Legal routes aren't working fast enough. Then maybe it's time to use less conventional methods. Elena studied his face, seeing the careful control slip enough to reveal steel underneath. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that people who operate in gray areas respond better to pressure from others who understand those areas. David thinks he's untouchable because he has money and lawyers, but there are other kinds of leverage. You want to threaten him? I want to make him understand that harassing you comes with consequences he can't lawyer his way out of. Elena should have been shocked, should have insisted on staying within legal boundaries, should have been uncomfortable with the implications of what Marco was offering. Instead, she felt something close to relief. What would you do? Nothing illegal, nothing violent, just information. Reminders that his behavior is being observed by people he doesn't want observing it. That he's making enemies in places he doesn't want enemies. Sometimes fear is more effective than law. And if it doesn't work? Then we escalate appropriately. But it will work. Trust me. Elena did trust him, which should have concerned her more than it did. But Marco had proven himself repeatedly, through actions, not words. He'd helped without expectation, protected without possession. Given her space while ensuring she wasn't alone. Okay, she said. Do it. Marco made a single phone call, speaking in rapid Italian to someone who responded with equal fluency. The conversation was brief, mostly listening on Marco's end, then a few terse instructions. When he hung up, his expression had shifted to something grimmer. "It's handled," he said. "By tomorrow afternoon, David will receive some information that should encourage him to reconsider his surveillance habits." What kind of information? The kind that reminds him his own secrets aren't as well hidden as he thinks. Nothing criminal, nothing we can't justify if questioned, just uncomfortable truths about business dealings he'd prefer stayed private. Elena nodded slowly. "You're good at this. The leverage game. I grew up around people who played it professionally. You learn by observation." Marco refilled both their wine glasses. "But Elena, I need you to understand something. Once we start operating in this space, there's no clean exit. You can't unknow what I am, what I'm capable of. Even if it helps you now, it complicates things later." "Complicates how?" "Because you'll always know I can make problems disappear through methods that exist outside legal frameworks, and every time you look at me, you'll remember that." Elena considered this. "You think that'll change how I see you?" "It changes how most people see me." "I'm not most people, and you're not the only one with complicated history now. I'm the woman who exposed her husband's criminal enterprise and destroyed his life publicly. We're both operating in moral gray areas." Marco smiled slightly. "Fair point." They finished their wine, talked about safer topics, books they'd read, places they'd traveled, the small details that build understanding between people. Eventually, exhaustion caught up with Elena, and she excused herself to the guest room. Sleep came easier than expected, the combination of wine and safety and Marco's steady presence in the apartment creating a cocoon against anxiety. She woke once during the night, heard music playing softly from another room, something classical, piano-heavy, and let it lull her back under. Morning arrived with sun streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee. Elena found Marco in the kitchen, already dressed, reading something on his tablet while an elaborate espresso machine hissed and steamed. "Coffee?" he offered. "Please, strong." He made her a cappuccino with the casual competence of someone who'd learned from Italians who took coffee seriously. Elena accepted it gratefully, letting the first sip work its magic. "Sleep okay?" Marco asked. "Better than I have in months, actually." "Good. Your apartment building called me since you listed me as emergency contact. The car is gone. Police increased patrols in the area. Should be safe to go back." Elena felt oddly reluctant to leave. The apartment felt protected, separate from everything happening outside, but she couldn't hide here forever. "I should get back. I have emails to send. Life to rebuild. I'll have Thomas drive you." "Marco, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. But he's already downstairs waiting, so you might as well take advantage." The drive back to her apartment was quiet, Thomas navigating morning traffic with smooth efficiency. He pulled up directly in front of her building, came around to open her door with old-world courtesy. "Miss Castellano," he said, the name sounding right in a way Mrs. Wright never had. "You need anything, you call. Don't matter what time." "Thank you, Thomas, for everything." Inside her apartment, Elena found everything exactly as she'd left it. Furniture assembled, boxes mostly unpacked, grandmother's bracelet gleaming on the wall. Her space, her life, her choice. She spent the morning finishing emails, each one becoming easier to write. By noon, she had responses from 3 galleries expressing interest in meeting. By 2 p.m., she had an interview scheduled for Friday. At 3 p.m., Catherine called. "You're not going to believe this. David's attorney just contacted me. They want to negotiate." "Negotiate what?" "The divorce is final." "Not the divorce. The criminal charges. Apparently David is willing to provide testimony against his business partners in exchange for reduced charges. And part of that deal involves him agreeing to cease all contact with you, period. No surveillance, no third-party communication, nothing." Elena sat down slowly. "What changed?" "I don't know. But something scared him. Yesterday he was defiant, claiming persecution. Today he's scrambling to make deals. You have any idea what might have prompted this?" Elena thought about Marco's phone call. The promise of uncomfortable truths. No idea. Well, whatever it was, it worked. If this deal goes through, David will be too busy saving himself to bother you. He'll do minimum security prison time, probably 18 months, then disappear into obscurity. And I'm free. You're free. After hanging up, Elena sat in her apartment feeling the weight of 6 years slowly lifting. David would face consequences. She would rebuild. The story wouldn't have a neat ending because life didn't work that way, but it would have resolution. Her phone buzzed, text from Marco. Heard the news. Congratulations. Elena smiled and typed back. Thank you for whatever you did. I have no idea what you're talking about, but you're welcome. The interview Friday went better than expected. The gallery director remembered Elena's work from years ago, expressed regret that she'd left the field, and offered her a position as associate curator starting immediately. Not her old job, something better, with more responsibility and creative control. Elena accepted on the spot. That weekend, she celebrated by doing something she hadn't done in years. She went to museums alone, just wandering and looking, reconnecting with the art that had once been her passion. No schedule. No one else's preferences to consider. Just her and paint and sculpture and the quiet conversation that happens between observer and observed. She was standing in front of a Rothko, letting color and emotion wash over her when someone spoke beside her. It's overwhelming if you let it be. Elena turned to find Marco standing there, hands in pockets, eyes on the painting rather than her. Are you following me? She asked, more amused than concerned. Coincidence. I come here most Saturdays, usually earlier, but I had a meeting that ran long. He glanced at her. You look happy. I am. I got a job. Start Monday. The gallery position? How did you... Of course you know. Is there anything you don't know? Plenty. For instance, I don't know if you've eaten today. Elena realized she hadn't. Not since breakfast. There's a place 2 blocks from here, best carbonara outside Rome. Want to try it? She should have said no, should have maintained boundaries, kept this relationship in the category of helpful stranger who'd moved on to other concerns. But Marco wasn't a stranger anymore, and the careful distance she'd been trying to maintain felt increasingly artificial. I'd like that, she said. The restaurant was exactly what Marco had promised, small, family-run, smelling of garlic and fresh pasta. They sat at a corner table and ordered in Italian, Marco translating for Elena when the elderly owner insisted on describing daily specials in rapid-fire dialect. Over carbonara that actually lived up to the hype, conversation flowed naturally between topics serious and light. Marco told her about the meeting that had run long, something about import regulations and customs delays that sounded boring until he added details about the customs official who'd been taking bribes and how that information had become useful leverage. Elena talked about her new position, the exhibitions she'd be helping curate, the excitement of returning to work she actually cared about. You're different than you were a month ago, Marco observed, twirling pasta with practiced efficiency. I'm myself again. Or maybe a new version of myself, someone who survived something terrible and came out stronger. Not just stronger, clearer. You know what you want now. Do I? I think so. You just haven't said it out loud yet. Elena met his eyes across the table, saw understanding there that went deeper than words. What do you want, Marco? From life in general or from this specific moment? Both. Either. He set down his fork, gave the question real consideration. From life? To build something legitimate that honors my family's better qualities while leaving behind the worse ones. To use the resources I have in ways that actually matter. To not wake up at 60 realizing I spent decades going through motions without real purpose. And from this moment, to have dinner with someone I find genuinely interesting, someone who sees what I am and doesn't flinch, someone who might become, he paused, chose his words carefully, someone important. The air between them shifted, possibility hanging unspoken. I'm not ready for complicated, Elena said quietly. I just got out of something that nearly destroyed me. I know. Which is why I'm not asking for complicated. I'm just asking for this, dinner, conversation, the chance to know you better without pressure or expectation. Can you do that? No expectations? I can. The question is whether you can let yourself. Elena thought about this, about months of having every interaction managed and controlled, about the freedom of making her own choices, even risky ones, about the difference between being saved and being seen. I can try, she said. Marco smiled and something in Elena's chest loosened. Then let's start there. They finished dinner slowly, in no hurry to end the evening. When the check came, Marco paid before Elena could argue, waving off her protest with easy dismissal. "You can get the next one," he said, assuming there is a next one. "I'm optimistic." They walked back through the city as afternoon faded to evening, streetlights flickering on one by one. Marco told her about growing up between two worlds, the legitimate surface life and the complicated reality underneath. Elena talked about her family, her sister in Boston, the parents who loved her but didn't quite understand the choices she made. At her building entrance, they paused. "Thank you for dinner," Elena said, "and for the company." "Thank you for saying yes." Marco stepped back, giving her space. "I meant what I said. No pressure, no expectations, just possibility. I'm starting to believe in possibility again." "Good. You should." He waited until she was inside, door locked behind her, before walking away. Elena watched from her window as he disappeared down the street, hands in pockets, seemingly lost in thought. Her apartment felt different now. Not empty, but peacefully solitary. She made tea, curled up on her couch with one of her rescued books, and let herself simply exist without analyzing or planning or worrying. The next weeks fell into rhythm. Work consumed her days, relearning gallery operations, meeting artists, planning exhibitions. Evenings were hers to fill however she chose. Sometimes that meant quiet nights in. Sometimes that meant dinners with Marco, who appeared in her life with comfortable regularity but never assumed access. They fell into patterns without discussing them. Saturday museum visits. Wednesday dinners at small restaurants Marco seemed to know in every neighborhood. Occasional texts throughout the day. Marco sharing articles he thought she'd find interesting. Elena sending photos of artwork that resonated. It felt like friendship, mostly, but underneath ran current of something more, patient and unhurried. Catherine called one Tuesday with final news. David's deal had been accepted. 18 months minimum security, full cooperation with federal investigators, and ironclad agreements to never contact Elena again. "It's over," Catherine said. "Completely over." Elena waited for relief, for triumph, for some dramatic emotion to mark the end of this chapter. Instead, she just felt quiet. "Thank you," she told Catherine, "for everything. I couldn't have done this without you. You did the hard part. I just handled the paperwork." That evening, Elena texted Marco. "It's officially over. David accepted the deal." His response came immediately. "How do you feel?" She considered this. Lighter. Like I can finally breathe all the way. That's good. That's what freedom feels like. Want to celebrate? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, yes, but only if you're ready. Elena understood what he was really asking. Ready to move forward, ready to let something new begin, ready to risk again after everything. She typed, "I'm ready. Tomorrow night. I'll pick you up at 7. Wear something nice." Tomorrow arrived with unexpected nervousness. Elena changed outfits 3 times before settling on a dress that felt right. Elegant, but not trying too hard, the deep green bringing out highlights in her dark hair. She left her grandmother's bracelet on the wall but wore small pearl earrings her mother had given her. Marco arrived exactly at 7, wearing a suit that made him look like he'd stepped from a classic film. His eyes widened slightly when he saw her. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "You clean up pretty well yourself." The car, not Thomas's usual Audi, but a vintage Mercedes that probably cost more than Elena's annual salary, took them across the bridge to a restaurant she recognized from reviews. Impossible reservations, Michelin stars, the kind of place people proposed at. "Marco, this is celebratory. You deserve it." Dinner was exquisite. Multiple courses that were more art than food, wine that tasted like bottled sophistication. But what Elena remembered later wasn't the food or the elegant surroundings, it was the conversation. Marco told her things he clearly didn't share often. His mother's death when he was 12, the expectation that he'd follow his father into the family business, the slow rebellion that had taken years to complete, the people he'd disappointed and the ones who'd understood. Elena shared her own truths, the slow erosion of self during her marriage, the shame she'd felt at not recognizing the signs earlier, the anger that still sometimes surfaced at herself as much as at David. "You can't blame yourself for trusting someone," Marco said. "I know, but knowing it intellectually and feeling it are different things." Then give yourself time. Healing isn't linear. Over dessert, something involving dark chocolate and gold leaf that tasted like expensive dreams, Marco reached across the table and took her hand. I need to tell you something, he said, and I need you to hear it without obligation or pressure. Elena's pulse quickened. Okay. I'm falling for you. Have been since that night in the lobby, if I'm honest. Not because I see you as someone who needs saving, not because you're a project or a responsibility, but because you're remarkable, brave and resilient and complicated in all the right ways. And I want to be part of your life, in whatever capacity you'll allow. Elena's throat tightened. Marco, I know the timing is terrible. I know you're rebuilding. I know the last thing you need is someone adding pressure, which is why I'm telling you this without expectation. You don't have to respond. You don't have to reciprocate. I just needed you to know. She looked at their joined hands, his olive skin against her paler tone, and felt something slot into place inside her chest. I'm scared, she admitted. Terrified, actually, of making another mistake, of trusting wrong again, of losing myself in someone else's story. Then don't. Keep your own story. I don't want to absorb you into mine. I want our stories to run parallel, intersecting where it makes sense, but remaining separate where it needs to. Is that even possible? I don't know, but I'd like to find out. With you. Elena took a breath, gathering courage. I'm falling for you too, even though it scares me. Even though I told myself I wouldn't get involved with anyone for at least a year, you're different than I expected, than anyone I've known. Different good or different concerning. Different honest. You've never pretended to be anything you're not, never tried to hide the complicated parts. That matters more than you know. Marco's thumb traced circles on her palm. So where does that leave us? Figuring it out together, slowly, with both of us keeping our own apartments and our own lives and just seeing what develops organically. I can work with that. They left the restaurant and walked along the waterfront, city lights reflecting off dark water. Marco draped his jacket over Elena's shoulders when she shivered, and she leaned into him without thinking about it. Thank you, she said, for everything, for seeing me when I was invisible, for helping me stand when I was falling, for giving me choice when I thought I had none. Thank you for letting me, for trusting me despite having every reason not to, for being brave enough to try again. They stood looking out at the water, two people finding their way towards something neither could quite name yet. Behind them, the city hummed with millions of other stories in progress. Ahead lay uncertainty and possibility in equal measure. But for the first time in longer than she could remember, Elena felt ready for whatever came next. Not because someone was protecting her, not because she'd been saved, but because she'd chosen herself first, and everything else could be built from that foundation. The weeks that followed carried a quality Elena had almost forgotten existed. Lightness mixed with purpose, freedom seasoned with choice. She woke each morning in her own apartment, made coffee in her own kitchen, and dressed for work she'd chosen rather than abandoned for someone else's convenience. The gallery consumed her days in the best possible way, pulling her back into a world of color and meaning she'd missed more than she'd realized. Marco remained a steady presence without becoming an overwhelming one. He understood instinctively when to appear and when to give space, a balance Elena appreciated more than she could articulate. Their relationship, if that's what it was, they hadn't labeled it yet, unfolded in moments rather than grand gestures. Coffee on Tuesday mornings before work, late dinners when her gallery events ran long, quiet evenings where they existed in the same space doing separate things, comfortable in shared silence. 3 months after that dinner by the waterfront, Elena curated her first exhibition since returning to work. The opening night arrived with the particular energy that only art openings possess: creative tension mixed with social performance, genuine appreciation competing with professional networking. Elena moved through the crowd with practiced ease, discussing pieces with collectors, introducing artists to potential buyers, feeling fully herself in ways she'd nearly forgotten were possible. Marco arrived late, slipping through the crowd to find her deep in conversation with a couple debating the merits of a particular sculpture. He waited patiently at the edge of the discussion, hands in pockets, observing rather than interrupting. When the couple finally moved on to examine other pieces, he stepped closer. "You're in your element," he said, approval clear in his voice. "I am. It feels good. Really good. Elena accepted the champagne flute he'd somehow acquired. Thank you for coming. I wouldn't miss it, though I have to admit I don't understand half of what you were explaining to those people about spatial relationships and implied violence. You don't have to understand it. You just have to trust that I do. Always. Marco's eyes held hers for a moment that stretched. Can I steal you away for a minute? There's something I need to discuss. The seriousness in his tone cut through champagne haze. Elena nodded and let him guide her to a quieter corner of the gallery, away from the densest crowd. What's wrong? She asked. Nothing's wrong, exactly, but there's a situation developing that you should know about. Marco kept his voice low. David's being released early. Plea deal, good behavior, overcrowding. He'll be out in 2 weeks. Elena's stomach dropped. 2 weeks? He was supposed to have another year. Federal prison is different than state. They have more flexibility with minimum security inmates, especially ones who cooperated extensively. Marco's expression remained carefully neutral. His release conditions include continued restraining orders and probation requirements. He can't contact you, can't come within 500 feet of your home or workplace, but he'll be free. The champagne suddenly tasted sour. Elena set it down on a nearby pedestal, not caring that it wasn't meant for glasses. After everything he did, after all the lives he damaged, 18 months and he just gets to walk back into the world? The system isn't designed for justice. It's designed for efficiency. David gave them 3 bigger fish to prosecute. He became more valuable outside than in. Marco's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. But the restraining orders are enforceable. Any violation sends him back immediately. No hearing required. You think he'll try something? I think men like David don't change fundamentally. They adapt, become more careful. But the core impulse, the need to control, to win, that doesn't disappear. Marco pulled out his phone, showed her a photo of a document. This came through an hour ago. David's attorney filed paperwork requesting modification of the restraining order terms. Elena scanned the legal language, her throat tightening. He wants permission to be in the same public spaces as me. Art galleries, museums, restaurants. He's claiming the current restrictions are too broad and preventing him from normal life. Exactly. His lawyer is arguing that in a city this size, blanket restrictions on public venues constitute unreasonable limitation on his freedom of movement. But I work at galleries. This is my professional world. He's trying to invade it. That's the point. He can't contact you directly, can't come to your home or office building. But if the judge modifies the order, he can engineer accidental encounters in spaces you frequent, make you feel watched, followed, unsafe. Elena leaned against the wall, the exhibition continuing around her in cheerful oblivion. All her carefully rebuilt peace suddenly felt fragile as sugar glass. What can we do? Catherine's already drafting opposition paperwork. We'll argue that his request is transparent harassment, that your professional obligations make galleries and museums fundamentally different than generic public spaces. The judge will likely see through it. Marco hesitated. But even if we win this round, he'll try something else. That's what I wanted to prepare you for. This doesn't end cleanly. I thought it was over. Catherine said it was over. The legal case is over. But David himself? Men like him don't stop until they're forced to stop completely. Elena closed her eyes, fighting the old familiar anxiety trying to claw its way back. She'd worked so hard to reclaim equilibrium, had started sleeping through the night again, had stopped checking over her shoulder constantly. And now David was coming back, determined to unravel everything she'd rebuilt. Marco's hand found hers, warm and steady. Look at me. She did. You're not the same person he manipulated before. You're stronger now, more aware, and you're not alone. He's going to realize very quickly that intimidating you has become significantly more complicated. Because of you. Because of you. I'm just backup. Marco squeezed her hand gently. But yes, because of me too. David knows by now that you have resources he can't match. People watching. Connections he doesn't want activated. That makes casual harassment much riskier for him. I don't want to live scared again. Then don't. Live informed and prepared, but not scared. There's a difference. Elena took a deep breath, pulling herself back together. Around them, the exhibition continued successfully. Her exhibition, her work, her life, built on her own terms. David didn't get to take that away. Okay, she said. What do I need to do? For now, finish your opening. It's going beautifully, and you've worked too hard to let David's shadow ruin it. Tomorrow we meet with Catherine and plan our response. But tonight, you celebrate what you've accomplished. He was right. Elena straightened, smoothed her dress, and stepped back into the gallery proper. For the next 3 hours, she focused completely on the work, discussing pieces, thanking attendees, basking in the satisfaction of a successful show. Marco stayed close but unobtrusive, a quiet presence that anchored without constraining. When the last guests finally departed and the gallery staff began cleanup, Elena found herself alone with Marco among the artwork. "Thank you for telling me," she said, "about David. I know you probably wanted to wait, not ruin the evening. I considered it, but you deserve to know immediately. Surprises are what he counts on." They stood in front of the sculpture that had sparked such debate earlier, an abstract piece suggesting motion and violence in equal measure. "Does it ever end?" Elena asked quietly. "The looking over your shoulder, the waiting for the next attack?" "Eventually, when the person realizes the cost of continuing exceeds any possible benefit, when they find an easier target or simply lose interest." Marco studied the sculpture thoughtfully. David's problem is that he made this personal. Made it about winning. That's harder to walk away from than simple financial gain. So what makes him stop? Complete and total defeat, the kind that leaves no ambiguity about who has power and who doesn't. Elena turned to look at Marco, seeing the steel beneath his careful civility. "You're planning something." "I'm preparing for possibilities. There's a difference." "Marco." "Elena." He met her eyes directly. "I won't do anything without your knowledge and consent, but I need you to understand that if David escalates, I will respond proportionally. Not illegally, not violently, but definitively. Can you live with that?" She should have been uncomfortable with the implications, should have insisted on purely legal remedies, should have maintained distance from the darker capabilities Marco possessed. Instead, she said, "Yes, I can live with that." The hearing on David's motion came 2 weeks later, in a courthouse that smelled like floor polish and bureaucratic fatigue. Elena sat beside Catherine in a gallery designed to make observers feel small and inconsequential. Across the aisle, David sat with his attorney, looking thinner than Elena remembered, but otherwise unchanged. He didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge her presence. The studied indifference felt more threatening than open hostility. The judge, a woman in her 60s with the expression of someone who'd heard every excuse humanity could manufacture, listened to both arguments with professional detachment. David's attorney painted his client as a rehabilitated man, trying to reintegrate into society, unfairly constrained by overly broad restrictions that prevented him from enjoying cultural institutions in his own city. Catherine countered with precision, noting that David had unlimited access to cultural venues throughout the 5 boroughs and beyond, just not the specific galleries and museums where Elena worked professionally. She submitted documentation of Elena's exhibition schedule, board meetings, and professional obligations, demonstrating that David's request would effectively grant him access to her workplace under the guise of public accommodation. The judge took 15 minutes to review materials before rendering her decision. Motion denied. The existing restraining order restrictions are appropriately tailored to protect Ms. Castellano's professional environment while allowing Mr. Wright reasonable access to cultural institutions throughout the city. If Mr. Wright finds himself at a venue where Mrs. Castellano is present, he is required to leave immediately. This is not negotiable and will not be revisited. Next case. Elena exhaled tension she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Beside her, Catherine made quick notes, face impassive, but satisfaction evident in the set of her shoulders. David's attorney whispered something urgent. David's response was too quiet to hear, but his expression, cold, calculating, sent ice through Elena's veins. They exited through different doors, Catherine steering Elena toward the south exit while David's attorney guided him north. In the courthouse lobby, Marco materialized from wherever he'd been waiting. "Well?" he asked. "Denied. Completely." Catherine tucked papers into her briefcase. The judge saw right through it, but David didn't take it well. Define didn't take it well. He didn't cause a scene, if that's what you're asking, but his affect when the ruling came down was concerning, very flat, very controlled. I've seen that look before in men who are planning their next move. Marco's expression darkened. I'll have Thomas increase patrols around Elena's building and the gallery. Is that necessary? Elena asked. He can't legally come near me. Legal and actual are different things, and men who've lost control in court often seek it elsewhere. Catherine checked her watch. I have another hearing in 20 minutes. Elena, be careful. Vary your routines. Stay aware of surroundings. If you see David anywhere, call police immediately and document everything. After Catherine hurried off, Marco walked Elena to where Thomas waited with the car. The spring afternoon carried unexpected warmth, tourists and professionals sharing sidewalk space in the particular chaos of lower Manhattan. I'm not going to live in fear, Elena said as they walked. I refuse. I'm not asking you to live in fear. I'm asking you to live smart. There's a difference? Fear is letting him dictate your behavior. Smart is recognizing threat and responding appropriately. Marco opened the car door for her. Where to? Gallery. I have a 2:00 meeting with a potential donor. Then the gallery it is. The meeting went well. A collector interested in funding emerging artists, exactly the kind of partnership that could elevate the gallery's profile. Elena focused completely, pushing David in court hearings and restraining orders into background noise. This was her world now. He didn't belong in it. She was walking the collector to the door, discussing future collaboration, when movement across the street caught her attention. A figure standing in shadow, watching the gallery entrance. Too far to identify clearly, but something about the posture, the focused attention, made her pulse spike. The collector said something Elena didn't quite catch. She forced her attention back, smiled, agreed to whatever had been proposed. When she looked again, the figure was gone. Probably nothing. Paranoia and court hearings making her see threats in shadows. But that evening, leaving the gallery after dark, she saw the figure again. Closer this time. Close enough to confirm what instinct had already known. David. He stood on the corner, hands in pockets, making no move toward her but clearly visible, clearly present, clearly violating the spirit, if not the letter of the restraining order, by positioning himself in her path home. Elena's hand found her phone, Catherine's number ready to dial. But before she could, Thomas's Audi pulled smoothly to the curb directly in front of her, blocking David from view. Thomas emerged, opened the back door. Miss Castellano, Mr. Valenti thought you might need a ride this evening. Elena glanced past the car to where David had been standing. He was walking away now, disappearing into evening foot traffic, but the message had been delivered. I can be here. I can watch. I can make you feel unsafe. She got in the car. Thomas drove in silence, taking a route that added 15 minutes but ensured they weren't followed. When they reached her building, he did a full sweep of the block before allowing her to exit. Mr. Valenti asked me to give you this, Thomas said, handing her a small device. Panic button. You press it, it sends your location to both him and police immediately. Keep it with you. Elena stared at the innocent-looking button, no bigger than a car remote. This is insane. I shouldn't need a panic button to live my life. No, you shouldn't, but until Mr. Right accepts reality, better to have options. Thomas's expression softened slightly. Mr. Valenti, he worries. About you specifically. I've worked for him 8 years, never seen him worry like this about anyone. What are you saying? Just that you matter to him, more than maybe even he's said out loud. So humor an old man and keep the button close. In her apartment, Elena deadbolted the door and stood in her living room feeling the walls close in. This was exactly what David wanted. Her scared, contained, controlled. She'd escaped his manipulation only to let fear of him dictate her behavior anyway. Her phone rang. Marco. Thomas told me, he said without preamble. Are you okay? Physically, yes. Mentally, I'm furious. He was standing there, Marco, right across from my gallery, just watching. I know. I have photos. We're sending them to Catherine and the police now. Photos? How? I had someone watching. I told you I'd prepare for possibilities. Marco's voice carried steel underneath concern. This was a test. David wanted to see if you'd react, if you'd call police, if you'd show fear. Now he knows you have resources monitoring him too. So what happens next? Police will document the violation. Catherine will file for contempt. Judge will likely increase restrictions and warn David that next time means immediate incarceration. Marco paused. But Elena, this is escalation. He's pushing boundaries deliberately. We need to discuss how you want to handle this. I want to handle it by living my life and letting the legal system do its job. The legal system is reactive, not proactive. It punishes after the fact. I'd prefer to prevent the fact from happening. Elena sat down heavily on her couch. What are you suggesting? Let me have a conversation with David. Not threatening, not illegal, just clear communication about consequences if he continues this path. He won't listen to you. He will if I explain things in terms he understands. Leverage, cost-benefit analysis, risk versus reward. Marco's tone remained even. I'm not going to hurt him, Elena. I'm going to make him understand that hurting you costs more than his pride can afford. And if that doesn't work, then we escalate appropriately. But let me try conversation first. Elena wanted to say no, wanted to insist on legal remedies and proper channels. But legal remedies hadn't stopped David from standing outside her workplace. Proper channels hadn't prevented him from making her feel unsafe in her own neighborhood. Okay, she said quietly. But I want to know what you say to him. Everything. You will. I promise. 2 days later, Marco called with an update. I had my conversation with David. And he's an interesting character, smart enough to understand implications without needing threats spelled out. Arrogant enough to believe he's still the smartest person in any room. Marco's tone carried dark amusement. I explained that his current path had limited upside and significant downside, that making you uncomfortable might satisfy his ego but would absolutely guarantee responses he wouldn't enjoy. What kind of responses? The kind where his business prospects dry up completely, where loans get called in, where professional networks mysteriously close, where every venture he attempts meets unexpected obstacles. Marco paused. I didn't threaten anything illegal, just made clear that I have reach into spaces he needs access to, and that reach could become problematic for him. How did he respond? With the expected bluster about not being intimidated, followed by calculation. He's a numbers man at heart. He'll weigh the satisfaction of harassing you against the cost of losing professional opportunities. Marco's voice softened. It might not stop him completely, but it should make him reconsider casual boundary violations. Should isn't the same as will. No. Which is why I'm also having him watched. Not constantly, but enough that he knows surveillance exists. Sometimes the perception of oversight is more effective than actual oversight. Elena processed this. You're building a cage around him. I'm creating consequences for behavior. The cage is his own choices. 3 weeks passed without incident. David didn't appear outside the gallery. Didn't engineer accidental encounters. The restraining order violation was formally documented, earning him a stern warning from the judge and increased scrutiny from his probation officer. Elena's life resumed its rhythm: work, museum visits, dinners with Marco that had evolved into something neither of them had labeled, but both understood. Then Elena's sister called. You need to come to Boston, Lauren said without preamble. Mom's in the hospital. Heart attack. She's stable now, but Elena, it was serious. The world tilted. How serious? They're doing an angioplasty tomorrow. Prognosis is good, but she's asking for you. I'll be on the next train. Elena threw clothes into a bag, called the gallery to explain, and was heading for the door when her phone rang again. Marco. Thomas told me. He's downstairs. He'll drive you. Marco, it's a 4-hour drive. You can't ask Thomas to I'm not asking Thomas. I'm coming with you. We'll be there in 3 hours. You don't have to eat. I know I don't have to, but I'm going to anyway. Argument over. The drive to Boston passed in a blur of highway and worry. Marco drove with focused efficiency, ignoring speed limits in a way that suggested he knew exactly which roads were monitored and which weren't. Elena spent most of the journey on the phone with Lauren, getting updates, hearing the fear underneath her sister's medical competence. They reached Massachusetts General just before midnight. Lauren met them in the cardiac wing, still in scrubs from her own shift in the ER, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. She's sleeping, Lauren said, but stable. The cardiologist says the damage was minimal because Dad got her here so fast. Elena hugged her sister fiercely. Thank you for calling me. Of course I called you. You're her daughter. Lauren pulled back, noticed Marco standing quietly behind Elena. And you brought backup. Lauren, this is Marco. Marco, My sister Lauren. Dr. Castellano, Marco said, shaking her hand. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances. Lauren studied him with the same direct assessment she probably used on patients. So you're the one who helped Elena demolish her ex-husband's life. I provided resources. Elena did the demolishing. Despite everything, Lauren smiled slightly. I like him, she told Elena. He can stay. They spent the night in uncomfortable waiting room chairs, taking turns checking on their mother, who slept through most of it thanks to carefully calibrated medication. Their father, a gentle man who'd always seemed younger than his years, looked a decade older, fear having aged him overnight. She's going to be okay, Elena told him, holding his hand. She's tough, like her daughters. I know, His voice broke. I can't imagine this world without her in it. Marco, who'd been giving them space, appeared with coffee and food from somewhere that had no business being open at this hour. He distributed both without fanfare, then settled back into observation mode, present but not intrusive. He's good, Lauren murmured to Elena during a quiet moment. Knows when to be visible and when to fade back. That's rare. I know. You falling for him? Elena watched Marco across the waiting room, talking quietly with their father, somehow managing to make a terrified man smile. I think I already fell. I'm just figuring out what to do about it. My advice? Do something before you overthink yourself out of it. Good ones don't come along often. The angioplasty the next morning went smoothly. Elena's mother emerged groggy but stable, already arguing with doctors about when she could go home. Elena sat beside her bed holding her mother's hand, feeling the fragility of it. You look good, her mother said, voice rough from intubation. Better than at Christmas. Happier. I am happier. The divorce is final? Months ago. It's over. Her mother's eyes found Marco, who was standing in the hallway giving them privacy. That the man who drove you here? Yes. Marco. Lauren likes him. That's high praise from your sister. I like him too. Then don't waste time, sweetheart. Life's too short to spend it alone when you don't have to be. Elena stayed in Boston for 3 days until her mother was transferred from ICU to a regular room and doctors confirmed she'd make full recovery with lifestyle modifications. Marco remained throughout, helpful without hovering, charming her family without trying too hard. On the drive back to New York, Elena found herself studying his profile, this man who'd appeared in her life at its lowest point and somehow become essential. Thank you, she said, for coming, for staying, for being exactly what I needed when I needed it. You would have been fine without me. Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to be. Marco glanced at her, something shifting in his expression. Elena, I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear it as information, not pressure. Her pulse quickened. Okay. I'm in love with you, have been for months. I've tried not to be because the timing was terrible and you needed space, and I didn't want to be another complication in your life. But watching you with your family these past few days, seeing you strong and capable and completely yourself, I realized I don't want to keep pretending I'm not. Elena's breath caught. Marco, I'm not asking you to reciprocate. I'm not asking for anything to change. I just needed to say it out loud. You deserve to know where I stand. The highway stretched before them, afternoon sun turning pavement to gold. Elena let the words settle, let herself feel their weight and warmth. I love you too, she said quietly. I think I have for a while. I just wasn't ready to admit it, because admitting it felt like vulnerability, and I'd spent so long being vulnerable in ways that hurt. And now? Now I'm realizing that vulnerability with the right person isn't weakness, it's trust. Elena reached across the console, laced her fingers through his. I trust you, Marco, more than I've trusted anyone in a very long time. He squeezed her hand gently. So where does that leave us? Figuring it out together, still keeping our own spaces and lives, but maybe being more honest about wanting those lives to intertwine. I can work with that. They drove in comfortable silence, hands linked, the city growing closer with every mile. Elena felt something settle in her chest. Not the desperate need she'd mistaken for love with David, but something quieter and infinitely stronger. Partnership. choice, the kind of love that enhanced rather than consumed. Her phone buzzed. Text from Catherine. Need to call you when you're back in the city. Not urgent, but important. Elena showed Marco the message. Probably an update on David's probation status. Or something else entirely. We'll find out soon enough. They reached Manhattan as evening fell, the city lighting up in its usual spectacular fashion. Thomas met them at Elena's building to collect the car, giving them both a knowing look that suggested nothing got past him. In her apartment, Elena called Catherine immediately. Welcome back. How's your mother? Recovering well? What's the important but not urgent news? Catherine's tone shifted to carefully neutral. David violated probation, got caught trying to access financial accounts he'd claimed were closed. His probation officer arrested him yesterday. He's back in custody pending a hearing. Elena sat down slowly. Back in prison? Likely, yes. The judge won't look kindly on financial violations barely 4 months after release. He's probably looking at completing his full original sentence plus additional time. Catherine paused. Elena, it's over. Actually over this time. He's going away for years, and when he gets out, he'll be a convicted felon with a record that makes professional rehabilitation nearly impossible. He's done. He's done, Elena repeated, the words feeling surreal. After hanging up, she turned to Marco, who'd been listening from the kitchen doorway. Catherine says he's going back to prison. Violated probation with financial fraud. Marco's expression suggested this wasn't entirely surprising news. That was fast? Almost suspiciously fast. Marco, did you? I did absolutely nothing illegal. But I may have ensured that certain financial irregularities David thought were buried came to the attention of people who monitor such things. He held her gaze steadily. He was never going to stop, Elena. Never going to leave you alone. So I made sure his attention got redirected permanently. Elena should have been shocked, should have insisted that manipulation of legal systems, even for good reasons, was wrong, but all she felt was overwhelming relief. How long will he be gone? Minimum 5 years, possibly 8, long enough for you to live your life without looking over your shoulder, long enough for him to become irrelevant. She crossed the room, wrapped her arms around Marco, and let herself lean into his strength. Thank you. For all of it. For seeing what needed to happen and making it happen. Always. Marco's arms came around her, solid and sure. You're safe now, completely safe. I promise. They stood that way for a long moment, the last piece of Elena's fractured life finally settling into place. David was gone. Her mother would recover. Her career was flourishing, and the man holding her loved her not despite her complications, but including them. Stay tonight, Elena said quietly. Not in the guest room. Here. With me. Marco pulled back enough to see her face. You sure? I'm sure. I'm ready. For all of it. His smile transformed his features, careful control giving way to genuine warmth. Then I'm staying. That night, they wrote a different kind of story together. Not rescue or salvation, but partnership freely chosen. Not escape from something terrible, but movement toward something good. Elena fell asleep in Marco's arms, feeling safer than she had in years. Not because he protected her, but because he saw her as capable of protecting herself and chose to stand beside her anyway. The difference mattered. Morning arrived with unfamiliar warmth. Marco's arm draped across her waist, his breathing steady against her shoulder, sunlight filtering through curtains. Neither of them had bothered to close the night before. Elena lay still for a moment, cataloging the newness of waking beside someone and feeling peaceful rather than anxious. David had always been a restless sleeper, checking his phone before dawn, already mentally 3 steps into his day before his feet hit the floor. Marco slept like someone who'd learned to find rest wherever he could, deeply but ready to wake if needed. She shifted slightly, and his arm tightened reflexively before he stirred awake. Morning, he murmured, voice rough with sleep. Morning. Elena turned to face him properly. Coffee? In a minute. Marco's eyes, clearer now, studied her face. Any regrets about last night? None. You? Not even remotely. He traced a finger along her jawline. Though I should probably go back to my place at some point. Get clean clothes. Feed the plant I keep forgetting I own. You have a plant? Had. Past tense. It's probably dead by now. Elena laughed, the sound feeling natural and unforced. Go, do whatever you need to do. I have to get to the gallery anyway. We're hanging a new exhibition today. They moved through morning routines with unexpected ease, navigating shared space without awkwardness. Marco borrowed her shower while Elena made coffee. She found him a spare toothbrush from the cabinet under her sink, trying not to think too hard about the domesticity of the gesture. When he emerged dressed in yesterday's clothes, hair still damp, she felt a flutter of something that might have been contentment. Dinner tonight? He asked, accepting the coffee she offered. Your place or mine? Surprise me. He kissed her before leaving, unhurried and thorough, then disappeared down the stairs, whistling something classical that Elena couldn't identify. She stood in her doorway watching him go, feeling the shape of her life rearranging itself into something she hadn't planned but didn't want to resist. The gallery consumed her day in the best possible way. The new exhibition featured emerging artists working in mixed media, pieces that challenged conventional boundaries between sculpture and painting. Elena worked alongside the installation team, debating placement and lighting, losing herself in the satisfying precision of curation. Her phone buzzed periodically, texts from Marco sharing random observations about his day, a picture of his definitely dead plant, a question about whether she preferred Italian or Thai for dinner. She was standing on a ladder adjusting track lighting when her assistant director approached, looking uncertain. Elena, there's someone here asking for you. Says he's a friend, but he's not on the approved visitor list. Elena climbed down carefully, brushing dust from her hands. Did he give a name? Vincent Torres. He said you'd know who he was. The name meant nothing. Elena shook her head. I don't know anyone by that name. Did he say what he wanted? Just to speak with you personally. He seems, I don't know, professional? But there's something about him that made me uncomfortable enough to check first. Elena's instincts prickled. Where is he now? Reception area. I told him you might be busy. Good call. Let me see what this is about. Elena pulled out her phone, sent a quick text to Marco. Someone named Vincent Torres just showed up at the gallery asking for me. Name mean anything to you? The response came immediately. Don't talk to him alone. I'm 10 minutes away. Elena's pulse spiked. She turned to her assistant. Tell Mr. Torres I'll be out in 15 minutes. And stay visible in the reception area, please. Don't leave him alone. Should I call security? Not yet. But be ready to. Elena used the waiting time to Google the name, finding several Vincent Torres, but none that seemed relevant. She checked the gallery's security camera feed on her phone, got a clear look at the man waiting in reception. Mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of neutral professional appearance that could belong to a lawyer, accountant, or federal agent. He sat calmly, hands folded, not touching his phone or showing any impatience. Marco arrived in 12 minutes, moving through the gallery with purpose. He found Elena in her office, computer still showing the security feed. That's Vincent, Marco confirmed, studying the screen. He works for my uncle, the one who's still heavily involved in the family's less legitimate enterprises. Elena's stomach tightened. Why would he be looking for me? That's what I'm going to find out. Stay here. Marco, this is my gallery. If something's happening that involves me, I'm not hiding in my office. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. Then we go together. But you let me lead the conversation. They walked to reception together, Marco's hand light against Elena's back. Vincent Torres stood as they approached, his expression professionally pleasant and completely unreadable. Mr. Valenti, he said, no surprise in his voice. I thought you might appear. Vincent, it's been a while. Marco's tone carried careful neutrality. What brings you to Miss Castellano's gallery? Your uncle would like to speak with you. He asked me to extend an invitation. Vincent's eyes flicked to Elena. Both of you, actually. My uncle knows how to reach me directly. He doesn't need intermediaries. He felt a personal approach would be more appropriate given the circumstances. Vincent pulled a card from his pocket, offered it to Marco. Tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. The address is on the back. It's a private residence, not a business location. Very informal. Marco didn't take the card. What circumstances? I'm just delivering the invitation, Mr. Valenti. The details would be better discussed in person. Vincent set the card on the reception desk when Marco didn't accept it. He asked me to emphasize that this isn't about business. It's family. Family that I've distanced myself from for good reasons. Understood. But he was quite insistent. Said to tell you it concerns matters that could affect Ms. Castellano's safety. Vincent's gaze shifted to Elena again, something like apology in his expression. I'm sorry to be cryptic. Those were my instructions. Marco's entire body had gone still in a way Elena recognized, the predator calculation he usually kept hidden surfacing momentarily. If my uncle wanted to threaten Elena, he'd do it directly. Games aren't his style. This isn't a threat. It's genuinely about protection. Vincent checked his watch. I've delivered the message. What you do with it is your choice. But Mr. Valenti, your uncle specifically said to tell you that David Wright's connections go deeper than you realize, and there are people who aren't happy about how his situation was handled. Elena felt Marco's hand tense against her back. Vincent continued. He said you'd understand what that meant. 7 p.m. tomorrow. The address is in Queens. He nodded politely to them both and left, moving through the gallery like a man who'd completed an unpleasant task with professional efficiency. After he disappeared, Elena turned to Marco. What did he mean about David's connections? I don't know, but if my uncle sent Vincent personally, it's serious. Marco picked up the card, studied the address. This is his house in Forest Hills. Not his office, not neutral territory. He wants privacy. Should we go? Probably not. My uncle is... Marco paused, choosing words carefully. He's the reason I left the family business. Everything I didn't want to become. Talking to him means opening doors I've spent years keeping closed. But if it's about my safety, then I'll handle it without involving you. Marco pocketed the card. Let me make some calls first, find out what this is actually about. The rest of the day passed under a shadow Elena couldn't quite shake. Marco left to deal with whatever family complications had surfaced, promising to call later. Elena threw herself into exhibition work, but her mind kept circling back to Vincent Torres and his careful warnings about David's connections. That evening, alone in her apartment, she found herself researching David's business history more thoroughly than she had before. The pharmaceutical company where he'd worked as CFO had been involved in a merger shortly before his arrest. The acquiring company was owned by a private equity firm with ties to... Elena clicked deeper, following threads. Several businesses that Marcus Webb, the investigator Catherine had hired, had flagged as potentially connected to organized crime. Her phone rang. Marco. I made calls, he said without preamble. What Vincent said about David's connections is legitimate. The pharmaceutical company David worked for was partially funded by people my uncle knows. When David got arrested and started cooperating with federal investigators, he gave up information about money laundering that implicated some powerful people. People who are angry about it. Angry enough that they've been looking for leverage. And apparently they've identified you as potential leverage against the person who exposed David in the first place. Meaning you. Meaning me. Marco's voice carried weight. Elena, these aren't people who operate within legal systems. They don't file lawsuits or make threats through lawyers. If they decide to apply pressure, it gets dangerous. Elena sat down slowly, ice spreading through her chest. So what do we do? I meet with my uncle tomorrow. Find out exactly what he knows and what he's willing to do about it. He owes me nothing, but family dynamics are complicated. He might help. He might not. I'm coming with you. Elena, no. This is about me as much as you. I'm not sitting at home worrying while you walk into whatever this is alone. Her voice firmed. We do this together, or not at all. Silence on the line. Then Marco exhaled slowly. Okay, together. But Elena, my uncle's world is different than anything you've experienced. It's going to be uncomfortable. I've survived worse than uncomfortable. Fair enough. I'll pick you up tomorrow at 6:30. Dress casual, but respectful. And whatever you see or hear tomorrow night, you can't react. Can't show shock or fear or judgment, just neutral observation. Can you do that? Yes. The next evening, Elena dressed in dark pants and a simple sweater. Nothing flashy, but nothing that suggested she was trying too hard either. Marco arrived precisely on time, wearing jeans and a leather jacket that made him look more like the man he'd been raised to be than the one he'd chosen to become. The drive to Queens passed in near silence, both of them wrapped in their own thoughts. The neighborhood they eventually reached was unremarkable. Tree-lined streets, modest houses that had probably been in the same families for generations, cars that were nice but not ostentatious. Marco pulled into the driveway of a well-maintained colonial, lights glowing warmly in the windows. "That's his house?" Elena asked, surprised. "It looks so normal." "My uncle believes in not attracting attention. Flashiness gets you noticed by people you don't want noticing." Marco turned off the engine but didn't immediately get out. "Last chance to stay in the car." "Not a chance." The front door opened before they reached it, revealing a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and an apron dusted with flour. "Marco, come in, come in. Your uncle is in the study, and you must be Elena. I'm Rosa, Marco's aunt. Welcome to our home." The warmth was so genuine, so completely at odds with Elena's expectations, that she found herself momentarily speechless. Rosa ushered them inside, the house smelling of garlic and tomatoes, family photographs covering every available surface. "He's expecting you," Rosa said, gesturing toward a hallway. "I'll bring coffee in a moment." Marco led Elena through a home that could have belonged to anyone. Comfortable furniture, well-worn rugs, a kitchen visible through an open doorway where something delicious was clearly in progress. The study at the end of the hall was the only room that suggested anything beyond suburban normalcy, lined floor to ceiling with books and dominated by a massive desk. Behind the desk sat a man who looked so much like Marco might in 20 years that Elena had to suppress a startled reaction. Same sharp features, same careful eyes, but weathered by time and experience into something harder. "Marco." The voice carried genuine affection. "It's been too long." "Uncle Sal." Marco moved forwards, accepted the older man's embrace with what looked like real warmth despite the complicated history. "You've met Elena." Sal turned his attention to her, and Elena felt the weight of assessment that came from a lifetime of reading people. "Ms. Castellano, thank you for coming. I know this must be uncomfortable." "I appreciate you seeing us," Elena said, keeping her voice steady. "Please sit." Sal gestured to chairs positioned in front of his desk. "Rosa will bring coffee, and then we'll talk about your problem." They settled into seats as Rosa appeared with a tray bearing espresso and cookies that looked homemade. She distributed cups with practiced efficiency, kissed Sal's cheek, and disappeared back toward the kitchen. "You have a beautiful home," Elena said, meaning it. "Rosa's doing. She makes everywhere we've lived feel like home." Sal sipped his espresso. "Now, let's discuss David Wright and the people who are unhappy with him." Marco leaned forward slightly. "Vincent said David's connections go deeper than I realized." "They do. The pharmaceutical company he worked for was a useful vehicle for certain financial transactions. David's cooperation with federal investigators disrupted those transactions and implicated several people who value discretion. They're not happy about that." "And they're looking at Elena as leverage," Marco said flatly. "They were. Past tense." Sal's expression remained neutral. "I had conversations with relevant parties, explained that Ms. Castellano was under protection and that any action taken against her would be considered action against family." "That's been accepted." Elena blinked. "Just like that?" "Just like that. In our world, family protection is absolute. You don't touch someone under family shield unless you want war. No one wants war." Sal turned his coffee cup slowly. "Marco, I know you've worked hard to distance yourself from this life. I respect that. But you're still my nephew, still family. When family needs help, we help." "What's the price?" Marco asked quietly. "No price." "You think I'd leverage your girlfriend's safety for favors? What kind of man do you take me for?" Sal looked genuinely offended. "You're my sister's son. That's enough." Marco's throat worked. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. There's more you need to know." Sal pulled a folder from his desk drawer, slid it across to Marco. "David Wright isn't just angry about his conviction. He's been making noise from prison about having information that could damage you, Elena. Claims he has recordings, documents, things he'll release when he gets out." Elena felt cold. "Jennifer warned me about recordings from the apartment. He has them. Private investigator I trust confirmed it. They're in a storage unit registered to a shell company David set up before his arrest. He's been trying to arrange access through his attorney, but the storage company has been slow to process the requests. Slow because you made them slow, Marco said. Slow because I suggested it might be in their best interest to require extensive documentation before allowing access to units associated with criminal proceedings. Sal smiled slightly. The advantage of owning property is knowing other property owners. We help each other out occasionally. Lena looked between Marco and his uncle, seeing family resemblance in more than features. Can the recordings be destroyed? Not legally. Not without David potentially pressing charges for destruction of property or evidence tampering. Sal leaned back in his chair. But here's what I can do. I can ensure those recordings stay in that storage unit indefinitely. Paperwork gets lost, requests get misfiled, access requires documentation that's always somehow incomplete. David never gets his hands on them. For how long? Marco asked. As long as necessary. David serves his sentence, gets out in 5 years, maybe 8. By then, recordings from a marriage that ended a decade ago? They're irrelevant. No media outlet will care. No one will pay attention. They lose all leverage through simple passage of time. Elena felt tension she hadn't realized she was carrying begin to ease. Why are you helping us like this? Sal's expression softened. Because my nephew chose you. Because he's happy for the first time in years. Because family takes care of family, and like it or not, you're family now. He shifted his attention to Marco. Your mother, my sister, she worried about you. Worried you'd become like your father, like me, that you'd never find a way to be happy and legitimate at the same time. She'd be glad to see you proved her wrong. Marco's eyes glistened slightly. She would have liked Elena. I like Elena. Rosa likes Elena. That's all that matters. Sal closed the folder. So here's how this works. You two go live your lives. Don't worry about David. Don't worry about angry money launderers. Don't worry about recordings. I'll handle the things I'm good at handling, and you focus on being happy. Deal? Uncle Sal. Marco's voice caught. No arguments. This isn't negotiable. You're family. Sal stood, came around the desk. Now, Rosa made bracciolo. You're staying for dinner, and I don't want to hear protests about it. Dinner was exactly what Elena imagined Sunday dinners should be. Loud, warm, filled with food that kept appearing from Rosa's seemingly endless kitchen. Sal's adult children arrived with their families, transforming the house into chaos of the best kind. Everyone welcomed Elena without question, folding her into conversations and debates, and the comfortable rhythms of people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Marco relaxed in ways Elena had never seen, the careful control he usually maintained dissolving into something easier. He argued politics with his cousin, debated soccer with Sal, helped Rosa clear dishes while telling her stories that made her laugh until she had to sit down. He's different with you, Rosa said quietly to Elena during a moment when they were alone in the kitchen. Lighter, like he's finally letting himself believe he deserves good things. He does deserve good things. I know, but men like Marco, men who grow up surrounded by darkness, sometimes they don't believe that. They think happiness is for other people. The fact that he brought you here, that he's letting family see him happy, that's significant. Rosa squeezed Elena's hand. Take care of him, and let him take care of you. Both things matter. By the time they left, near midnight, Elena felt stuffed with food and dizzy with belonging. Marco drove in comfortable silence, one hand on the wheel, the other linked with hers across the console. That was unexpected, Elena said eventually. My uncle has always been good at surprising people. It's part of what makes him dangerous. Marco glanced at her, but he meant what he said. You're under family protection now, that's absolute. How do you feel about that? I know you wanted distance from that world. I feel grateful, relieved, and yeah, a little uncomfortable about owing family favors, but mostly grateful. He squeezed her hand. David can't hurt you now. The recordings are neutralized. The people who wanted leverage don't have any. You're safe. We're safe, Elena corrected. This was about protecting both of us. We're safe, Marco agreed. Back at Elena's apartment, they collapsed on her couch, exhausted and overfed and content. Your family is wonderful, Elena said, kicking off her shoes. Rosa, especially. She hugged me goodbye like she'd known me for years. Rosa loves taking care of people. It's her superpower. Marco pulled Elena against his side. Did you mean what you said about being safe together? Of course. Why? Because I've been thinking about something, about how we've been doing this, keeping separate apartments, maintaining separate lives that occasionally intersect. And I'm wondering if maybe we could consider something different. Elena's pulse quickened. Different how? Not rushing into anything, Marco said quickly. Not moving in together or making dramatic changes. But maybe being more intentional about building something together. Making plans that extend beyond next week. Talking about what we want this to become instead of just letting it unfold. Elena shifted to look at him properly. What do you want it to become? I want you in my life permanently. I want to know that when I make decisions about my future, you're part of those decisions. I want to stop wondering if this is real or if you're going to wake up one day and realize you'd be better off without the complications I bring. Marco's voice carried vulnerability Elena rarely heard from him. I want certainty. With you. I want that too. The certainty. The permanence. The building something intentional together. Elena touched his face gently. But Marco, I need you to understand something. I can't go back to being someone's wife in the traditional sense. Can't be the person whose identity gets absorbed into someone else's. I need to stay myself, keep my own work, maintain my own space, even if we're building shared space too. I wouldn't want you any other way. Your independence is part of what I love about you. Marco turned his head to kiss her palm. So what does that look like practically? Maybe we start spending more nights together than apart. Maybe we talk about eventually getting a place that's ours together while keeping our individual apartments for work or when we need space. Maybe we make decisions as partners while respecting that we're still individuals. Elena smiled. Maybe we stop overthinking and just let it evolve naturally with the understanding that we're both committed to making it work. I can do that. All of that. They sealed the conversation with a kiss that turned into more, eventually moving from couch to bedroom, building new memories in a space that was becoming theirs rather than just hers. Later, lying in comfortable darkness, Elena found herself thinking about the journey that had brought her here. From that lobby carrying a cardboard box to this moment, wrapped in arms that felt like home. The path had been anything but straight, had involved pain and fear and moments when she thought she'd never feel safe again. But she'd survived. More than survived. She'd rebuilt herself into someone stronger, clearer, more certain of what she wanted and what she wouldn't accept. Thank you, she said quietly into the darkness. Marco's arms tightened around her. For what? For seeing me when I was invisible, for offering choice when I thought I had none, for being patient while I figured out how to trust again. Thank you for letting me, for taking the risk despite every reason not to. For choosing to build something with me despite knowing exactly what I am. What you are is good, complicated, but good. I'll take complicated and good. They drifted towards sleep, the city quiet beyond the windows, the future stretching ahead with more possibility than certainty, but enough of both to feel right. The next morning brought a call from Catherine with final updates on David's case. His probation violation had resulted in an additional 4 years added to his sentence. The storage unit containing the recordings had encountered administrative issues, requiring extensive documentation before access could be granted, documentation that would take months to process properly. David's attorney had filed complaints, but they'd been lost in bureaucratic machinery that moved at its own inexorable pace. It's like someone greased the wheels to make everything move as slowly as possible, Catherine observed. But I'm not questioning it. However it happened, those recordings are effectively neutralized. Good, Elena said, catching Marco's eye across her kitchen, where he was making breakfast. That's really good. So I think we can safely say this chapter is closed. David's contained, his leverage is gone, and you're free to move forward. Catherine paused. How are you doing? Really doing? Elena watched Marco crack eggs with focused precision, humming something under his breath, comfortable in her space like he belonged there. I'm good. Really, genuinely good. I'm glad. You deserve it. Catherine's voice warmed. And Elena, I'm proud of you for fighting back, for refusing to be erased, for building something better from the wreckage. After hanging up, Elena joined Marco at the stove, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. Good news? He asked, not pausing in his whisking. The best. It's really over. All of it. Marco set down the whisk, turned in her embrace. Then I think that deserves a celebration. What kind of celebration? The kind where we take the weekend off, go somewhere neither of us has been, and do absolutely nothing productive. Elena laughed. I have an exhibition opening next Friday. So we'll be back by Thursday. Come on, Elena. When's the last time you took a real vacation? She thought about it, realized she couldn't remember. Okay, yes, let's do something completely spontaneous and impractical. That's the spirit. They spent the morning planning, looking at last-minute flight deals, debating between beach and mountains, finally settling on a small inn in Vermont that promised nothing but quiet and spectacular fall foliage. Marco made reservations while Elena cleared her calendar, both of them giddy with the freedom of spontaneous decisions made together. That afternoon, Elena went to the gallery to finalize arrangements for her absence. Her assistant director assured her everything would be fine, shooing her away with instructions to actually relax for once. Walking back through the neighborhood she now called home, Elena felt the weight of the past year settling into perspective. She'd lost a marriage but gained herself, had endured manipulation and emerged clear about what she would and wouldn't accept, had learned the difference between being saved and being supported, between love that consumed and love that enhanced. Her phone buzzed, text from Lauren. Mom's being released tomorrow. She's already planning what she's going to cook for Thanksgiving. Some things never change. Elena smiled, typed back, tell her I'll be there, and I'm bringing someone. The response was immediate. Marco? About time. Mom will love him. Dad will interrogate him. I will judge silently from the corner. It'll be perfect. Elena could picture it perfectly. Her family folding Marco into their chaos. Rosa's braciole competing with her mother's traditional turkey. Two families who'd seemed impossible to reconcile somehow finding common ground. The image felt right in a way that surprised her with its clarity. She returned to her apartment to find Marco had already started packing, his efficiency suggesting he'd done this enough times to have it down to a science. I was thinking, he said, folding a shirt with military precision. After Vermont, maybe we look at places. Not to buy immediately, but just to see what's out there. Something that could be ours eventually, when we're ready. Elena set down her bag, moved to stand beside him. You're serious about this? About us having a future together? Completely serious. I know it's fast by conventional standards, but Elena, I'm 43 years old. I've dated enough to know the difference between something good and something extraordinary. This is extraordinary. You're extraordinary, and I don't want to waste time pretending to be casual about it. I'm 36 and just figured out what I actually want from life, which includes you, permanently, in whatever form that takes. Elena took his hands. So yes, let's look at places. Let's make plans. Let's build something intentional and honest and completely our own. Marco pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. I love you, more than I knew I could love anyone. I love you too, complications and all. They finished packing together, the domesticity of it feeling natural rather than forced. That evening, they had dinner at a small restaurant they'd been meaning to try. Making plans for Thanksgiving and discussing potential exhibition ideas Elena was developing. Normal conversation between two people building a life together. Unremarkable except for how remarkable it felt to have arrived at unremarkable. The weekend in Vermont was exactly what they needed. Long walks through forests ablaze with autumn color, evenings by the fireplace at their inn. Mornings spent in comfortable silence, reading separate books while sharing space. They talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's rhythms in ways that only extended time together could teach. Sunday evening, driving back to the city, Elena found herself thinking about the woman she'd been when this all started. That woman had felt powerless, trapped, uncertain of her own perceptions. She'd walked out of her apartment with a cardboard box and no clear plan beyond escape. Now she was returning to a life she'd built deliberately, to work she loved, to a man who saw her clearly and chose her anyway, to a future that felt open rather than predetermined. What are you thinking about? Marco asked, catching her contemplative expression. How far I've come. How different everything is now. Different better or different complicated? Different real. Different honest. Different mine. Elena reached across to take his hand. Thank you for being part of that. Thank you for letting me. They drove through twilight toward home, the city emerging on the horizon like a promise. Behind them lay months of struggle and transformation. Ahead stretched possibility unlimited by anyone's expectations but their own. Elena had walked out of her old life, choosing dignity over denial, unaware that a single conversation in a lobby would lead here. To safety built on choice rather than rescue. To love that enhanced rather than consumed. To partnership that respected independence while building interdependence. She hadn't been saved, she'd saved herself. Everything else was just choosing well what came next. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Elena knew exactly what she wanted. Not just for tomorrow, or next week, or next month, but for the long expanse of years stretching ahead. She wanted this. This man, this life, this version of herself she'd fought so hard to become. She wanted all of it, and finally, gloriously, she knew she deserved it. The weeks leading to Thanksgiving passed in a rhythm Elena had never quite experienced before. Not the frantic pace of trying to please someone else, nor the hollow quiet of isolation, but something balanced and alive. Work filled her days with purpose. Marco filled her evenings with companionship, and the space between held room for herself in ways she was still learning to appreciate. They'd started looking at apartments, not urgently, but with genuine interest. Real estate agents led them through spaces that were either too expensive, too small, or possessed that indefinable wrongness that made both of them shake their heads before the tour was even finished. But the search itself had become part of their routine, a Sunday morning ritual that involved coffee, open houses, and increasingly specific debates about what they actually wanted. Natural light is non-negotiable, Elena said as they left yet another apartment with north-facing windows that made it feel like a cave. Agreed, and I need office space, somewhere I can work without feeling like I'm operating out of a closet. Marco guided her around a puddle on the sidewalk. Also a kitchen that doesn't make you want to cry. That eliminates about 70% of Manhattan. Then we expand the search. Brooklyn, maybe. Or Queens. Elena stopped walking. You'd move to Queens? I'd move to Jersey if the right place was there, though I'd prefer not to test that particular commitment. Marco smiled. Elena, where we live matters less than who we're living with. I learned that from my uncle. He could have bought a mansion anywhere. He chose a normal house in Forest Hills because that's what made Rosa happy. Your uncle is surprisingly romantic for someone in his line of work. The best ones usually are. They understand loyalty and commitment in ways that transcend legal frameworks. Marco checked his watch. We have one more viewing if you're not too tired. The final apartment was in a pre-war building in Brooklyn Heights, just off the promenade. The agent, a cheerful woman named Diane, who'd shown them 6 places over the past month, met them in the lobby with her usual enthusiasm undimmed by their consistent rejections. I have a good feeling about this one, she said, leading them to the elevator. It's been on the market for 3 months, which means the owner is motivated, and it has everything on your list. They'd heard that before. But when Diane opened the door to the 4th-floor apartment, Elena felt something shift. The space opened before them with generous proportions and light that seemed to come from everywhere. Tall windows facing south and east, hardwood floors that glowed honey gold in afternoon sun, crown molding that spoke of craftsmanship from an era when such things mattered. The kitchen had been updated but retained character, with enough room for 2 people to move comfortably without collision. The master bedroom was large without being cavernous, with an ensuite bathroom that didn't require renovation. And the second bedroom, clearly meant as an office, had built-in bookshelves covering an entire wall and windows overlooking a quiet street lined with brownstones. Marco walked through slowly, hands in pockets, face carefully neutral in that way Elena had learned meant he was feeling something significant. She did her own circuit, opening closets, checking water pressure in the bathroom, testing the floorboards for squeaks. They met back in the living room, both trying not to show too much interest while Diane waited with practiced patience. The building allows renovations with board approval, Diane said, reading from her tablet. Low monthly maintenance, great neighborhood. Walking distance to the promenade, excellent restaurants, easy subway access to Manhattan. What's the catch? Elena asked. Why has it been on the market for 3 months? Honestly, the last owner was elderly and passed away. The estate sale pricing was initially too high. They've reduced it twice, and now it's actually below market value for the square footage and location. But people get superstitious about death in apartments. Marco and Elena exchanged glances. Elena had survived enough darkness that someone dying of old age in a beautiful apartment didn't register as concerning. Can we have a few minutes alone? Marco asked. Of course, I'll be in the hallway. After Diane left, closing the door behind her, Marco turned to Elena. So? It's perfect, suspiciously perfect. I keep waiting to find the horrible flaw that explains why it's still available. Same, but I've looked. There's no horrible flaw, just good bones and unfortunate timing for the estate. Marco walked to the window, looked out at the tree-lined street. I can see us here. Actually see it. Morning coffee in that kitchen. Books filling those shelves. You working on exhibition plans at that table while I handle business calls in the office. Elena joined him at the window, slipping her hand into his. I can see it too. And that terrifies me a little. Because wanting something this much makes it feel like I could lose it. Like I'm tempting fate by being too happy. Marco turned to face her fully. Or maybe you've earned this. Maybe after everything you've survived, you deserve to have something beautiful and uncomplicated. Maybe happiness isn't tempting fate, it's claiming what's rightfully yours. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just a man who's watched too many people, including myself, wait for perfect timing that never comes. This apartment is right. The timing is right. We're right. So let's stop overthinking and just say yes. Elena looked around the space again, letting herself imagine it fully. Their furniture mixed together, Marco's espresso machine on the counter beside her grandmother's ceramic mug, lazy Sunday mornings and quiet weeknights, and the ordinary magic of building a life with someone who actually saw her. Okay, she said. Yes, let's do this. They made an offer that afternoon, below asking price but reasonable given the market. The estate attorney countered, they negotiated, and by evening they had an accepted offer contingent on inspection and board approval. Elena signed the contract with hands that trembled slightly, not from fear but from the magnitude of choosing this, choosing him, choosing a future they'd build together. We just bought an apartment, she said, staring at the signed paperwork in disbelief. We did, together. Marco kissed her temple. Ready to tell our families. My mother is going to lose her mind. So is Rosa. They'll probably start planning how to decorate before we even close. They decided to wait until Thanksgiving to share the news in person, wanting to see their families' reactions, rather than hear them through phone static. The intervening weeks passed in a blur of inspections, paperwork, and the surreal experience of planning a shared future with someone who seemed as committed to maintaining her independence as she was. Marco never suggested she give up her current apartment, never implied she should quit her job or modify her career for his convenience. Instead, he asked questions about her exhibition schedule and adjusted his own calendar accordingly. He learned the names of artists she represented and actually remembered details about their work. He understood when she needed space and respected when she needed solitude. It was so fundamentally different from her marriage to David that sometimes Elena had to consciously remind herself this was real, not some elaborate performance that would eventually crack to reveal manipulation underneath. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and bright, the kind of November day that made you grateful for warm homes and warmer company. Elena and Marco drove to Boston together, the car loaded with wine and desserts and the nervous energy of someone introducing their partner to family for the first time as a serious relationship. What if they don't like me? Marco asked as they crossed into Massachusetts. Elena laughed. You met my sister. She already likes you, and my mother is still so grateful you drove me to the hospital that you could show up wearing a clown suit and she'd welcome you. What about your father? Dad will interrogate you about your intentions and your finances and probably your 5-year plan. But he does that to everyone. Lauren's ex-husband still has nightmares about the questioning. Noted. Be prepared for interrogation. They arrived at Elena's childhood home just before noon, the house already filled with cooking smells and the sound of her mother directing operations from the kitchen. Lauren emerged first, hugging Elena, and then Marco with equal enthusiasm. Mom's been cooking since dawn, Lauren whispered, and she's made Dad promise to go easy on Marco, which means he'll only ask moderately invasive questions instead of extremely invasive ones. Elena's mother appeared next, looking healthier than she had at the hospital, but still moving carefully. She embraced Elena with the particular fierceness of parents who've been reminded of mortality, then turned that same warmth on Marco. So you're the young man who took care of my daughter, she said, holding both his hands. Elena says you drove her all the way from New York when I was sick. It wasn't that far, Mrs. Castellano. Call me Marie. And it was far enough that it mattered. Marie studied his face with the same direct assessment Elena recognized in herself. You planning to stick around? Mom, Elena protested. It's a fair question. I'm not getting younger, and I'd like to know if this is serious or if I'm wasting emotional energy getting attached to another man who's going to disappear from my daughter's life. Marco didn't flinch from the scrutiny. I'm planning to stick around as long as Elena will have me, which I hope is permanently. Marie's expression softened. Good answer. Come help me in the kitchen. Elena, your father's in the den pretending to watch football. Elena found her father exactly where predicted. Newspaper abandoned on his lap while some game played unwatched on television. He stood when she entered, and they held each other in the way of fathers and daughters who don't always know what to say but feel everything nonetheless. You look good, he said finally. Better than at Christmas. Happier. I am happier. This Marco. He treating you right? Better than right. He treats me like an equal partner, like my opinions matter, like I'm someone worth listening to. Her father's jaw tightened. That should be the baseline, not an achievement, but I'm glad you found it. He paused. Your mother likes him, says he has kind eyes. He does, and complicated history, and connections to people who operate outside legal frameworks. I'm not going to lie to you about who he is, Dad. I appreciate that. Does his complicated history put you at risk? His complicated history is what kept me safe when I needed protecting, and he's working hard to build something different than what he came from. Elena met her father's eyes. I love him. I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but I love him, and I'm planning a future with him. Then I'll trust your judgment. You've earned that trust by surviving what you survived and coming out stronger. Her father pulled her close again. Just promise me you'll be careful. And if anything ever feels wrong, you'll tell us. I promise. Thanksgiving dinner unfolded exactly as family gatherings should. Chaotic and loud and full of food that kept appearing from Marie's kitchen in quantities that defied logic. Marco fit in naturally, helping serve, engaging in political debates with Elena's father that remained heated but respectful, charming Marie by asking for her recipes and actually taking notes. During dessert, while everyone was properly stuffed and comfortable, Elena and Marco exchanged glances. He nodded slightly. She took a breath. We have news, Elena announced. Marco and I bought an apartment together in Brooklyn Heights. The table erupted in exactly the joyful chaos Elena had anticipated. Marie wanted to know everything about the apartment, square footage, kitchen details, proximity to good schools for hypothetical future grandchildren. Lauren demanded photos immediately. Her father asked serious questions about financial arrangements and board approval that revealed he'd been paying attention to real estate markets. Through it all, Marco fielded questions with patient good humor, his hand finding Elena's under the table and holding on. When can we see it? Marie asked finally. We close in 3 weeks. After that, anytime you want. Christmas, Marie declared. You'll host Christmas, both families. It'll be perfect. Elena started to protest that they'd barely have furniture by Christmas, but the light in her mother's eyes stopped her. Okay, Christmas, both families. It'll be wonderful. Later, helping clean up while Marco was cornered by her father for what looked like a serious conversation, Lauren nudged Elena with her hip. He's good for you. Really good. I wasn't sure at first. The whole showing up when you were vulnerable thing gave me pause. But watching you together, seeing how you are with him, you're yourself. Completely yourself. That matters. I love him, Elena said simply. It's terrifying and wonderful and nothing like what I thought love was supposed to feel like. That's because real love isn't supposed to feel like drowning. It's supposed to feel like breathing. Lauren glanced toward the den where Marco and their father seemed deep in discussion. What do you think Dad's asking him? Probably his entire life story and his credit score. They were both right. When Marco emerged 20 minutes later, he looked slightly shellacked, but intact. Your father is thorough, he said quietly to Elena. But fair. And he gave his blessing, which I appreciate even though we didn't technically ask for it. The drive back to New York Sunday evening carried the satisfied exhaustion of a holiday well spent. Elena dozed against Marco's shoulder while he drove, comfortable in the silence between them. Your family is wonderful, Marco said at one point, loud and invasive in the best possible way. They liked you. My mother already texted me 3 times to say so. Rosa texted me 5 times asking when she gets to meet your parents. I think we may have started something we can't stop. Family dinners for the rest of our lives? Could be worse fates. The apartment closing went smoothly, papers signed in a lawyer's office that smelled like old books and new beginnings. They received keys on a Tuesday afternoon and spent the evening walking through empty rooms, planning where everything would go and what they'd need to buy. We should probably get a couch at some point, Elena observed, standing in the living room that echoed with their voices. And a bed. Sleeping on the floor loses its charm after about one night. They spent Thanksgiving weekend moving, enlisting Thomas and some of Marco's cousins who showed up with trucks and muscles and the kind of efficiency that suggested they'd done this before. Elena's apartment was packed up and transferred in a single day, her carefully rebuilt life folding neatly into boxes that would reopen somewhere new. The new apartment slowly filled with personality. Elena's books mixing with Marco's, her grandmother's bracelet finding a place of honor in the bedroom, his espresso machine claiming counter space beside her coffee maker. They negotiated closet space and bathroom routines, discovered that Marco was meticulous about loading the dishwasher, while Elena couldn't care less, learned to communicate about small irritations before they became big ones. 2 weeks before Christmas, Elena was working late at the gallery when her phone rang. Unknown number, but something made her answer. Ms. Castellano? The voice was unfamiliar, male, carrying official weight. Yes? This is Officer Rodriguez with New York State Corrections. I'm calling to inform you that David Wright was released this morning. He served his full sentence with time added for the probation violation. Per his release conditions, he's required to maintain distance specified in the restraining order. I'm calling as a courtesy to make you aware of his release. Elena's stomach dropped. He's out? I thought he had 2 more years. Sentence was recalculated for good behavior and time served. He was released at 8 a.m. this morning. After hanging up, Elena immediately called Catherine. I know, Catherine said before Elena could speak. I found out an hour ago, and I've been trying to reach you. The recalculation was processed last month, but we weren't notified until today. I'm filing a complaint about the notification failure, but that doesn't change the fact that he's out. What do I do? You do nothing. The restraining order is still in effect. He comes anywhere near you, he goes back to prison immediately. And Elena, he knows that. He's not going to risk it. Elena wanted to believe that, but she remembered David's cold calculation, his need to win, and fear crept up her spine despite every rational argument against it. She called Marco next. I heard, he said immediately. Uncle Sal called me 20 minutes ago. He's already got people watching David's movements. If he even looks in your direction, we'll know. I thought I was done being afraid of him. You are. This is just information, not threat. He's out, he's being monitored, and he has significantly more to lose now than he did before. Marco's voice carried absolute certainty. Come home. I'm making dinner. We'll talk through what this means and what it doesn't. Home. The word settled something in Elena's chest. She locked up the gallery and headed to Brooklyn, to the apartment they'd made theirs, to the man who'd somehow become her anchor without ever trying to tie her down. Marco met her at the door, reading her face accurately and pulling her into an embrace that spoke of protection without possession. He can't hurt you, Marco said against her hair. Not anymore. Not ever again. They ate dinner in their kitchen, discussing David's release with the calm practicality of people who'd faced worse and survived. Marco explained that his uncle's network had already located David in a halfway house in the Bronx. That surveillance confirmed he'd met with his parole officer and complied with all check-in requirements. He's going to try to rebuild his life, Marco said. Find work, probably under an assumed name. Stay under the radar. The last thing he wants is attention from people who still remember what he did. And if he doesn't stay under the radar, then my uncle's people ensure he understands the consequences. But Elena, I genuinely think he's done with you. We broke him completely. There's no revenge left to pursue because there's nothing left of the man who wanted revenge. Elena wanted to believe that. Over the following days, she forced herself to continue normally, going to work, meeting with artists, preparing for the gallery's holiday exhibition. No suspicious cars appeared outside her building. No figures watched from corners. David remained a ghost, present in theory but absent in practice. Christmas approached with its usual mixture of joy and commercial chaos. Elena and Marco prepared to host both families in their new apartment, a prospect that seemed increasingly insane as the date approached. "We don't have enough chairs," Elena observed a week before Christmas, surveying their dining area. "We'll rent them, and tables, and probably additional plates." Marco was making lists with the same focus he applied to business negotiations. "Rosa offered to bring half the food. Your mother insisted on bringing the other half. We're going to have enough food to feed the entire building." This was a terrible idea. This was a wonderful idea, chaotic, but wonderful. Christmas Eve arrived with unexpected snow, transforming Brooklyn into a postcard version of itself. Elena's family arrived first, her mother immediately commandeering the kitchen, despite promises to let someone else cook. Marco's uncle and aunt came next, Rosa bearing containers of food that kept appearing from her bags like a magic trick. The apartment filled with noise and warmth, and the particular chaos of two families learning to be one extended family. Children, Marco's cousins' kids, raced through rooms while adults attempted conversation over the din. Wine flowed freely. Food covered every available surface. Elena stood in her kitchen, their kitchen, watching it all unfold and felt something profound settle into place. This was what she'd been searching for without knowing it. Not rescue or salvation, but belonging built on her own terms. Family that accepted her completely. Love that enhanced rather than diminished. Marco found her during a quiet moment, slipping an arm around her waist. "You okay?" "I'm perfect. This is perfect. Chaotic and loud and perfect. Good, because I have something for you." He pulled a small box from his pocket, the size and shape unmistakable. Elena's breath caught. "Marco, before you panic, this isn't what you think. Or maybe it is, but not in the way you're worried about." He opened the box to reveal a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond set in platinum. "I'm not proposing marriage. I know you're not ready for that, might never be ready for that, and that's okay. But I wanted you to have this as a symbol of what we are to each other. Partners, equals, people who chose each other and keep choosing each other. It's beautiful. So if you want to wear it however you want. Engagement ring, partnership ring, just a ring you happen to like. The label matters less than what it represents." Marco's eyes held hers steadily. "I love you. I'm committed to you. I want to build a life with you. That's what this means." Elena took the ring, feeling its weight, its potential. She could wear it or not, could call it what she wanted or refuse to call it anything. Marco was giving her choice even in this, refusing to dictate terms or expectations. She slipped it on her left ring finger, where it caught the light and gleamed. "I love you too," she said, "and I choose you. Every day, I choose you." They kissed while their families pretended not to watch from the living room, though Elena caught Rosa elbowing Sal and her mother whispering urgently to her father. The rest of Christmas passed in joyful blur, gifts exchanged, stories told, families blending in ways that felt natural rather than forced. Elena's father and Sal discovered a shared passion for baseball and spent an hour debating the merits of various teams while their wives rolled their eyes affectionately. Lauren and Marco's cousin Angela bonded over medical horror stories. Children played games that involved too much running and too much noise, but genuine happiness. Late that night, after everyone had finally left and they'd done minimal cleanup before collapsing on their couch, Marco pulled Elena close. "That was incredible," he said. "That was insane, in the best possible way." Elena looked at the ring on her finger, still getting used to its presence. "Thank you for this, for understanding what I needed it to be. Thank you for wearing it, for choosing this, choosing us." They sat in comfortable silence, the apartment still smelling of Rosa's cooking and Marie's pies, the snow still falling outside their windows. "I have something to tell you," Elena said eventually. "The gallery offered me a partnership position. Part ownership, creative control over exhibitions, the whole thing." Marco sat up straighter. "Elena, that's incredible. When did this happen?" "Last week. I've been thinking about whether to accept. It's a huge commitment, and it means I'd be tied to the gallery long term." "Is that what you want?" "I think it is. I love the work. I love having creative control. And being an owner means I'm building something that's mine, not just working for someone else's vision. Elena turned to face him. But I wanted to talk to you first. Make sure it doesn't conflict with anything you're planning. Why would it conflict? I don't know. Maybe you were thinking about moving or starting a family or something that would require me to have more flexibility. Marco cupped her face gently. Elena, your career is yours. I would never ask you to sacrifice it or modify it for my convenience. If the partnership is what you want, take it. We'll figure everything else out around it. What about kids, if we decide we want them? Then we'll figure that out too, together, with childcare and shared responsibilities and whatever support we need. But we don't make decisions about your career based on hypothetical futures. We make them based on what you actually want right now. Elena kissed him, grateful beyond words for his understanding. I want the partnership. Then take it, celebrate it, own it completely. The new year arrived with Elena accepting the partnership position, her name added to the gallery letterhead, her vision shaping future exhibitions. Work consumed her in the best possible way, challenging and fulfilling and entirely hers. Marco's businesses continued to evolve, his uncle occasionally calling with opportunities that Marco evaluated carefully before accepting or declining. The line he walked between legitimate enterprise and family connection remained complicated, but Elena had learned to trust his judgment about which side to lean toward. They settled into rhythms that worked for them, morning coffee together before separate days, evenings that sometimes overlapped and sometimes didn't, weekends split between family obligations and quiet time alone. Elena kept expecting the relationship to hit rough patches, for Marco's careful control to crack and reveal the manipulation she'd been conditioned to expect. But months passed and he remained exactly who he'd always been, complicated but honest, powerful but gentle, devoted without being possessive. Spring arrived with Elena curating an exhibition that garnered significant critical attention, establishing her as a serious curator with distinctive vision. The opening night was packed, collectors and critics and artists filling the gallery to capacity. Marco arrived late, having been delayed by a meeting that ran long. He found Elena deep in conversation with a prominent collector, waited patiently at the edge of the discussion, then pulled her aside when the collector moved on. "You're brilliant," he said simply. "This exhibition is extraordinary. Thank you for coming. I know you had that thing with your uncle. I'll always come when it matters. And this matters." Marco handed her a champagne flute. "To you, to your vision, to everything you've built." They toasted among the crowd, two people who'd found each other in a lobby during a crisis and somehow built something extraordinary from that unlikely beginning. Later that night, walking home through spring-warm streets, Elena found herself thinking about the journey that had brought her here. From that cardboard box to this moment, partner in a gallery, partner to a man who actually saw her, living a life entirely her own. "What are you thinking about?" Marco asked, catching her contemplative expression. "How far I've come. How different I am from the woman who left that apartment." "Different how?" "Stronger, clearer, more certain about what I want and what I won't accept." Elena squeezed his hand. "That woman was running away from something terrible. This woman is running toward everything good." "And what's good?" "This, you, us, work I love, family I've chosen. A life I built myself with someone who supports that building rather than trying to control it." Marco stopped walking, pulled her close in the middle of the sidewalk. "I love you, more than I thought I could love anyone, more than is probably wise. I love you too, complications and all." They stood that way while the city moved around them, two people who'd found each other at exactly the right moment and built something neither had planned but both treasured. The future stretched ahead, uncertain in its specifics but clear in its foundation. Elena had chosen herself first, and everything else had grown from that choosing. She'd learned that rescue wasn't the same as partnership, that love should enhance rather than diminish, that vulnerability with the right person was strength rather than weakness. She'd walked out of her old life carrying nothing but a cardboard box and a shattered sense of certainty. She'd found help when she needed it, accepted support without surrendering autonomy, and built something new from the wreckage of what had been. Now she stood in the life she'd created, beside the man she'd chosen, certain of her own power and no longer afraid to use it. The journey had been brutal, the transformation had been necessary, The outcome had been worth every difficult step. Elena Wright had disappeared into Elena Castellano, who'd become something more than either name could capture. Herself, completely and unapologetically building a future on her own terms. She wasn't saved. She wasn't rescued. She was chosen after choosing herself. And that made all the difference.